Here.
Trevino. Morrow,
Ashley.
Here. Kurt,
Sorry. Here.
Cohen,
Here.
Shanahan,
Here.
Cristaldi,
Here.
Carlson, here, Hewitt.
Bill is walking in. Say here.
Here. Here.
I'm here. I want to invite everybody. I want to invite you from later. I don't think Allison, you want to.
There's or not.
I don't think so.
Okay.
She didn't say anything. I think she did.
All right, I'd like to move to approve the prior meeting minutes.
I think we need public comment first.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Sorry. Let me-
The public comment, it's been 15 minutes total, 3 minutes max.
Anyone to speak as part of public comment? Let's go to it. Good.
Thank you.
Now we're gonna go to the minute.
I'm gonna move forward,
Can I just have one sort of informational share? I got a call today from somebody saying that my ethics thing wasn't filed, and so I talked to the ethics committee, and so I've been asking, what they said is. I guess we've all, like, if you filed, because we were nominated in 25, the first year you filed was 24. So now you're gonna file a 25 update, but you have till July 1st, so whoever's getting all these alerts to all of us, you know, we're not out of, no one's out of sync yet, you have till July 1st to file it.
The 25, but 24, I got an email that said I was late. So I
Yeah,
scolded and filled it out, sent it.
But I mean, they're doing it like 2 years retroactively, so we didn't really get approved by the city council until 26. But anyway, I just thought it'd be helpful if people know the dates, and if you've got, and you can copy your original file forms to the new forms if you find it complicated.
I'm not sure that you can even do 24 form unless it's open for you, because I could not everybody, because I looked up you all to see who else had done it, because I was curious for the same reasons, and not everybody has the 24 even opened up, so there's.
Mine was opened up, every minute I pushed the button and it popped up.
Whatever, but yeah, whenever they send me the notification, but anyway, so you have to update it, but you have till July 1st, there were notes going around saying. We were all out of whatever, I don't think we are, so I just want to let you know that, that's all I have.
I got the message from Miss Renfia, who is now retired. Congratulations to her. So who's the point person that we will talk to?
Well, they came through there, but I think in her message, she said they were going, I know that. The mayor responded for the two appointees, and I think council was gonna have council members reach out to their appointees. Remind them to do it's a financial disclosures, right? Yeah, or affirmative. So I stayed out of that and let that process play out. I
But
don't
they're
know
not
if you-
due till July 1st, so 2025 are not due till, I talked to the head of the ethics commission.
Yeah.
The ones that, you know, and technically, those are the only ones we had to file, because even though we were announced in December 18th, we weren't approved by the city council until
Right.
January, so
Okay,
anyway.
so that's good information from the group. Okay.
Yeah, if anyone's having trouble reaching the ethics commission, just let me know. Thank you.
They have their problems.
Okay.
Well, thanks for bringing that. So we'll move forward to, I move to approve prior meeting minutes. Do I hear a second? Right, discussion?
I'm sorry, I'm very persnickety, but I thought, didn't you make that motion about the information that I seconded, because you kind of stepped up?
Correct.
You're right. That would be you then. Yes.
Can you say like that?
So the motion to ask for the information on internal audit policies.
Yeah.
We discussed it, and then Bill stepped in to make the motion or request.
Oh,
Oh, he's got it.
I remember, I forgot it this morning. Thank you. Any other changes to the?
I do really, Bob.
You too. Thank you, seriously. So I think we need a motion to accept as amended, correct?
Anybody, I don't
Moving.
So I mean, someone needs to, well, yeah, we need to accept them as amended.
okay, so move it properly second, all in favor say aye. And say nay.
Thank you, just by the substance was, I'm trying to hit a home run today with all my to-dos. You got my email, so I changed that. You got the ones I said I sent, and I did, but they went to this missing place, so you're getting those. So that's good news.
Before you jump in, just super quick, because this was discussed, if I may, Madam Chair. So this was discussed at council during their last meeting, and we talked on this topic, I think, 2 meetings ago. But the procedures, like recognizing people where they speak, so we had a little bit more order. I think it worked really well when we kind of followed those. I said,
Yeah.
those guys.
So during this part, moved it, during the facilitation part, he's gonna be.
Yeah.
Acknowledging who speaks next. We had, and you were doing it, where we did it where he like hooked up the.
I thought that was code for,
Where I want to speak.
that's like raising your hand in a Teams meeting.
And you don't keep your hand up, and it doesn't start the and you just start talking.
I think, so last week we had Scott, so there's a lot of rich conversation I stayed out of, but I think for the parts where we're going through things, it was pretty early. If you feel like we're sliding down the wrong way, just let me know, I'm talking shit. But thank you.
Thank you.
And we are making some good progress. I want to go through a couple of things. We do have our planning commission here today to do a presentation, which is great. But I have a few other things I want to cover with you guys. So I apologize, I'm trying to stay out of the way. So we're making our way through. And visually, it looks like we're halfway there, not quite. We have a lot of areas where we want to leave the charter as is, but you can't say sorry. This thing weighs a ton. But we're gonna this should be on. Perfect. Sure. So we're getting there. Last week, we, after some really useful input from Scott and Q&A, we accepted without change a series of Article 5 with more information needed. I think there's the perfect value you mentioned, Bobby, around the water thing. But maybe that's still important. Either way, we're making good progress. And I'm going today, after we hear from the planning commission, show you the status of our outstanding action items across all of those different articles. We have Ken's finished his with a couple of tweaks to the charter. I talked to Scott this morning. They have about 5 open items they're going to complete for us by this Friday. Some of the questions we've asked about, like salary increases, disproportionate salary increases, the internal audit sharing timeline, some other questions. So by the file, depending on how today goes, the following meeting, we should have answers to all our questions. We have a revisit sections that we couldn't quite close the door on because we didn't answer. So that's all I wanted to mention there. I wanted to, we talked about this before, and I feel like we're going in circles, so I want to. So our process is pretty straightforward, but I wanted to just lay it out again so that we're all clear. So we go through the charter article by article section. We basically make 3 decisions: leave it alone, right, and make a change in some cases. For example, can just change some language around compel and make other changes around making sure statutes are still in force. And then in some cases, we need more info. That's one of the reasons the planning commission is here today, and Scott was here last week. When we get more info, we either decide to leave it alone or change it. That's basically what we're doing in the repetitive process. Along the way, we track those action items. I try to make sure we do that for everyone, chase down answers myself with Ken and Scott for the city, track them accordingly. And then for those things that are, make changes, we've made a few, and those are out there in a document I told you about, which says charter with CRC changes. You can go see those anytime it's a live document. We're going to go through this process, right? And we're going to churn through, and eventually we're going to basically either make changes or don't make changes all the way through. At one point, we talked about accepting portions of the charter. I don't think that makes sense because some of the later sections refer to some of the earlier ones. So what I would like for us to do, because this is always live, you guys can always see the status. Let's complete the process, at which time all the action items will be closed. Our decisions will have been made. We can review those decisions, and we can review the changes in the charter collectively, plenty of time to revisit things if we need to. And then eventually we're going to pass a motion and say, you know what, this is our final set of recommendations. And those will be reflected in charter changes that we've decided we care about and hopefully we're presenting as a council. So the good news is we're on track with this. We're keeping close ties or close track of action items. We're being very transparent with the public and with each other when it comes to access and where things stand. Everything's on SharePoint. So I just want to mention this to everyone in case it wasn't clear. I think this is the best way to do it.
This is the change. What we were doing.
I think it's a clarification because we talked about new pieces.
go back and watch the video from last time, the change that I asked the question at the last meeting. You confirmed again at the last meeting that we were gonna vote on each section, so
Right.
it's not a clarification, it's a change.
Well, then we'll call it a change,
And
but in my mind, it precipitated the need to have a conversation and clarify, because I noodled on what you said. And I thought to myself, why would we keep approving sections, especially if we might go back to them after re-motion them? I thought, let's just keep a living conversation around decisions and changes, and then at any given time, we know where we stand. And only when we get through this process do we make a decision as a group. It gets us to the same result, but I think it's more expedient and more flexible.
I personally think, Chair, if I could
Okay.
No, he's going with that.
clarify that before. I don't agree with your approach, not we'll go with the group, but the issue I have is it's gonna be months and months and months before we vote on something. And I feel like we talked about it, we're not seeing the language, we talked about it, it's at least 2 weeks before we see the language, maybe 4 weeks. And the discussion's gonna become very cold, then we're gonna go back and have a discussion about the whole thing at once. I agree that we should have a discussion of the whole thing at once and vote on that at the end. But I personally, that's why I've asked the question between so far. Whether we were gonna see the turnaround of it, I recall we had that discussion at the very first meeting about the 2-week intervals, and is there enough time to turn around changes? I just feel like it's susceptible to us having to revisit issues or forgetting things. If a lawyer, I don't put a contract down for 8 months and then pick it back up again. I finished that piece, it's okay to revisit it, that's my thoughts on that. I would rather us vote if we will the group is to not vote on anything until the end, I'll go with it.
The page seems to be going pretty quick.
Yeah.
When do you anticipate that we'll be done going through this start to finish? A month, 2 months, what?
I'm gonna go back a slide. To your point, the pace has been fairly good, and we're now getting answers faster,
Yes.
because that's why we were in some cases delayed. Keep in mind, so far, we've changed very little so far. Meaning just a couple textual changes, you can see those in about 4 seconds by the end of the. I would suggest that if we continue in the way we've been doing it. I would argue we'd probably have maybe 5 to 6 meetings left.
To get through 6 to 11.
Yeah, with the caveat that it all depends on what we bring up, I can't.
No, I'm not gonna hold you to it, I'm just trying to get a sense.
Yeah,
I'm following what Ron was saying on timing, is it gonna be a month before we look at every 2 months?
No.
I mean, I would think, I've looked at 6 to 11, I think we're gonna move
Faster.
fairly quickly through that.
Yeah.
But maybe not.
I think we're doing pretty well. I mean, if you look at this text is where we made decisions that we don't have to change anything at all. We have some changes here we've already made, and you can see. We only have a handful of different sections where we have action items, and those will all be answered. Some we have today and some by Friday.
So personally, so long as we can vote at the end. And whether it's one more time or one time, I would like to take a look at the whole thing one last time. So as long as we can do that, I would say a bit agnostic on whether we vote along the way. I can go with that, that's fine. I don't have a problem doing that, if we want to look at that. But, we've got to keep that, I think you've said it, if you all have agreed at the end, we've got to be able to look back at it and make sure we're comfortable how that whole package looks and everything works together.
Yeah, I serve with this pleasure of this group, and I'll call him Bobby. I was basing this really on what we've done so far, looking at where we're at. And how few changes we've made and how easy it is for everyone to see where we've made decisions, where action, to me, it's kind of a manageable problem right now, but if we think we will forget it. We'll forget what's in 1 or 2 or 3 and we need to go back and vote. I can drive that decision process too, Bobby, go ahead.
I think I was gonna ask for clarification, but I think I understand what you were saying now, Ron, is that you wanted to kind of. Go over the section, finalize whatever we talked about with a vote, like at that point rather than all at the end, correct?
Not in the middle of it, yeah, but each section, then we vote on the thing as a whole.
Is that, but how, I mean, how is that greatly different than having a sense of what we wanted to change, getting the answers to, maybe some open questions, reviewing them. And then just doing it all, because as we go through the charter, because it's so hyperlinked. And I personally would feel comfortable taking a hard vote on something until we got to the end, because I wanna know,
It's.
I wanna shop the store or they're picking me up this.
It's subject to change, obviously, based on the vote at the end, but the point is that if what we're talking about is consensus on philosophically what we think needs to be done, then Ken's gotta do legal research and figure out what the proper wording is to effectuate that, then get it back to us, right? And even from what we've just heard, let's say we are an accelerated schedule, 6 more meetings is 3 more months. So if we do talk about something philosophically, we're not reviewing and voting on the language for 3 months later, but it's gonna get cold to us, and I feel like it puts us at a handicap, all of us, on what we talked about before. So what we had talked about at each meeting before now was that we would conceptually agree on language. Ken would take the necessary time to do this thing, get it back. We'd vote to advance that, and then it would become part of the package that would come from the end, and we could all debate it and put up. Yeah.
I'll make one comment and then I'll hand it off and get on the next one. What I've tried to do in this document is to memorialize things so we don't necessarily have to remember where we landed. Doesn't mean we might have changed minds. But again, just try to be incredibly detailed around this for your benefit so that you know where we landed. Doesn't mean we can't do what Ron's suggesting. Did you want to add something, Ashley?
Yeah, like you were saying, I feel like there's notes that we can revisit if you feel like you're gonna get hazy. But it just, towards the end, if we're all present and we're here to have a recap meeting after we get to the whole thing. Then we can do the vote at the end,
I guess I'm just not really confused. So what have we been doing this whole time?
We're making decisions for every section of every article. Those decisions, or in this case, for example, we need more information before we decide.
Sure.
If we go to others, I ask you, I'll read this, I'll ask you, you'll say it, and then I memorialize it here. And then remind everyone to double check my work after we meet, just in case I missed anything, which has happened a couple of times with the minutes. And then I track changes in here too around. It's not just more information needed, in some cases, it's. We need to change a word, and I'll indicate Ken's done that, go to the document and see what he did. Those changes are literally 1 or 2 words each so far, but I just want to answer your question.
So, well, I just want to, I'm trying to understand what Ron's suggesting. So are you suggesting that we go back before we get through the rest and vote on each item and do that now?
Yeah, my understanding of what we had progressed on was, we would review a provision. We would determine whether a change needed to be made and what the direction to Ken would be on how to make that change. Ken, again, sometimes we might suggest something that's unconstitutional or inconsistent with the rest of the charge, and Ken do his thing, which I have a lot of confidence in him to do. Then he would come back with language for us. We would test that language based on our discussion, conceptual, say that language was right, let's move forward, vote on that. It would become part of a full package of recommendations at the end that we would revisit and discuss meeting, sure all coordinated, vote on it all. My concern all along has been that if we don't review that language based on what our direction was, and have some discussion with Ken about it to make sure that if he said I deviated from what you directed me for a particular legal reason or something, months are gonna go by and it's gonna get cold to us. And we're gonna be inefficient in how we review it and potentially forget or miss things that we intended. Not to suggest that either the facilitator or council would do anything purposefully, they wouldn't, I know that. I'm just suggesting that we all have things in our head that months later we're not gonna be expressed to us.
But I guess just point of clarification, so we're halfway through this, are you suggesting that we not finish, that we go back and do language, or? I get I get your explanation, but process wise and timing wise, what are you suggesting?
My thought was that originally was that each meeting in advance of the meeting, we would get language back on changes we asked to have made prior to the meeting, unless there was a reason why it can't be produced in that 2-week interval. You guys might recall when we had the first meeting, we talked about whether 2 weeks was too quick or not. We talked about it's not too quick to turn around language. There might be some times where it is too quick to we would have it on the next meeting. So my thought was in advance of the meeting, we would get the language that we approved from the last meeting, review it, say, yeah, looks good, or move forward with it, and move it in advance of that way.
The other thing you mentioned, and then maybe we can get through a motion on this, because I'll follow the lead again. Is where there are either requests out for more information. Or Ken has had to tweak the language in the charter, he's made, like I said, a few small changes. In my mind, I don't want to discuss any of those sections of that article with you guys until we have both of those in play. Our plan was that we would do that. We would then go back, by definition, we would go back. Now, I would say we now we have everything we think we need to either say changes or no changes. And then I'd go back through that with you. So a good example is, we would, for the clerk, we had a 1-section order. And in there, we talked about the residency requirement. There was an action to find out what the department head residency requirement was in case we wanted to use that to reconsider the residency requirement for the clerk. I have now updated this to say there are no residency requirements. So what I plan to do today is go back to 3, because that's the only outstanding action. We closed it, say, guys, let's talk about it. What do we want to do here? And then we either get to changes or no changes. And now we check the box like we did with this first one, which was needed to start. If there are any lingering items, I generally don't want to crack that egg open, because I want to make sure we have everything at our disposal to advance the conversation and get those decisions from the group. I wasn't going to like plow ahead and then come back to Article 3 if all of Article 3's to-dos were done for you guys. So I was going to circle back purposefully where we had answers to outstanding items, just to clarify our process. But maybe we can run this to ground. I want to be sensitive to the planning commission who's kind enough to join us. We can maybe run a noodle on it, we'll tackle it as part of new business. Can we do that? Sure. Okay, great. Thank you. Great, thank you. All right, I'm gonna go back to.
I think I have my hand up, but.
I'm sorry if I missed you. With that being the case, I'll pull the presentation up. Thank you. Come forward. We're happy to have you and excited that we learn from you. Please bring up your presentation here. Right here and the keyboard has the magic arrow. Oh, no, it's not Stevie, so. I'm Rob. Thank you for coming up. Hi, welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, so nice to meet you here. I'm Melissa Thornada. I'm the Executive Director of the Hillsborough County Saline County Planning Commission. We're the long-range planning agency for the city of Tampa, city of Temple Terrace, city of Gwinnett City, and Hillsborough County. And we wear many hats, largely doing the long-range planning for the 4 local governments. But one of our unique capacities is that we do the redistricting for the city of Tampa. And we have a fabulous demographer and economist, Yasser Gonzalez, who leads that effort and also manages a lot of data and tracking of where growth is occurring in our community. So he'll be making our presentation tonight. I'm just here if there are any stray questions you want to head my way. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Good evening.
Good evening. Yes.
Perfect.
So once again, this is Yasser Gonzalez, I'm the demographer for the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission staff in case there's a report in this meeting. Again, we've been doing this for a while. I've been telling data stories for 20 years at least. So here's another data story we're going to be telling. This presentation may seem disjointed, but your question was multi-part. We're trying to bring these parts together. We thought we were going to be successful. Let us know, I'm sure.
If that little window is in your way, you can drag it to any spot on the screen.
You can minimize it.
It's just part of our challenge from the neighborhood.
I'm gonna plug the logo now, the plan. So first of all, we're gonna go to citywide trends. So we're going to go to the 10,000 foot view and we're gonna be discussing again what's happening at the city. As we can see, the city has its own momentum. The city's building is right now at 191,000 housing units, over 400,000 people, and over 500,000 jobs. And again, these are significant growth patterns. We're talking about 19% for jobs, 15% since 2015. That is, growth, and 9% for housing units. Now, by 2035, why do we do 2035? Because you're doing like a 10-year. Yes.
I'm sorry, but that's what I was asking, the baseline was 2015.
Yes.
So this is a 10-year increase.
Yes, indeed, yes. We did 10 years because you do a 10-year cycle, I'm assuming that, yes, indeed.
That's Hillsborough or two.
That is Tampa itself.
So Tampa in 2025
Tampa
has
itself.
430,000.
Yes. Well, that is 400,000, yes, that is the population, and then 15% higher than 2015. I appreciate your clarification, yes. So what's happening in 2050? Those of you like 2035, 2050, again, we continue to, that momentum, according to the latest information we have, that momentum will continue forward. And again, we're gonna surpass 200,000 units of housing, 200,000 units, and nearly 500,000 people and 700,000 jobs. And again, some of these numbers appear to be, similar to the other ones. This is not a forecast where we looked at the past and we just replicated. These are actually a very small area forecast. So again, these numbers are quite bad. So again, we're looking at 1 in 5 new jobs to the county will come to the city of Tampa. I mean, new people to the county goes in 37% of jobs. That means 4 in 10 new jobs coming. So again, the city has an incredible momentum going forward. Any questions as to what's happening? So again, we're seeing a tremendous growth in the city and it's gonna go forward. Any questions?
Is that a mix of both government jobs as well as private sector?
Yes, all the jobs. Yeah, it includes utility workers, it includes again, service providers, high commercial, high industrial also jobs. And that's based on the planning work of our planners and the people in terms of the community plan. There's future land uses and we look at those and then again, we project forward. So again, this is so building upon the work that everybody's doing.
And do you look at commercial development at all, or is
Yes,
it
of course, yes.
single and family housing, or is it?
We look at everything, like there's some uses that are mixed, so we do have we have to make some inferences as to how much of a 10-acre parcel will be jobs versus will be, people, different high-rise things. So yeah, we definitely are comprehensive, do a comprehensive look, yes. And again, that's our specialty, small area population, and again, small area trends. So, okay, great, the city is doing great, but what is going on in different parts of the city? This is where we're gonna be moving here. And we have 5 planning districts. So some of them are intuitive, right? We have the South Tampa planning district here, just covers the peninsula. We have a Central Tampa, which is mainly, East Tampa there. We have the West Shore district here, and then we have the so-called USF institution, which can cover the university and that area there, and then New Tampa to the news. So again, we're gonna be referring to them and go into great detail. So again, a lot of numbers here. This is how you not do a slide. This is how, it will be a big cross if it was in like in school or something. Don't do a slide like this. But this, the gist of it, the message is this. Every planning district is growing, going forward. And some of them, like Central Tampa, like USF, for example, and West Shore are growing significantly. For example, Central Tampa is gonna bring in 27,000 new people versus 25,000 in the previous 10 years. So going forward 10 years, 27,000, so it's more people gonna be in. Incredible amount of growth in USF institutional, almost twice, almost 3 times as much as many residents are gonna come into that USF area, that corridor. Again, South Tampa, again, you think it looks crowded, but again, it's definitely gonna be, 12,000 more people there. Now, in terms of jobs, it's similar. All the planning districts are bringing in more jobs, but the bulk is going to be in Central Tampa. So again, we're looking at a lot of population in Central Tampa and a lot of jobs in Central Tampa. So we're done with growth. we're done with, for this presentation, of course, it's not done in the city, we're just getting warmed up, if you will. But we're going to go into the discipline process now. Any questions about growth, about jobs, about commerce, before we move into this? And again, we can always, take questions later, so just let me know. So the planning commission, as Mr. Nina said, is the city charter has tasked the planning commission with, doing redistricting every 4 years. So just before the election, we come up with a redistricting process where we keep the district balanced. With all the growth that I just showed you, we have to do certain things in order to keep, this is that way they don't become too unbalanced, and then one council member is representing, let's say, half the city, and then the other ones, the smaller portions. So it's one of those things. So we go through this redistricting process we just concluded. And so there are 7 council districts. Again, some of you, may or may not be familiar, but 7 council districts. And only 4 of them, though, are tied to a territory, to a geography. So before in South Tampa, District 5, that will be East Tampa, and then 6 in West Tampa, and then, of course, 7 in the covers USF and New Tampa. So this is where you were discussing about the charter. What's happening with the charter? There are 2 sections that go over in this, and you've already probably looked at it, section 2.01 and 8.03. That, they have some similarities, eco-population. We use the latest census, figures on the 201, maintain precinct boundary. Again, we have a discussion when we were doing the districting, people always ask, why do you keep precincts? Why do you move entire precincts versus just splitting them up and doing like it's more granular? We are capable of doing more granular work. Again, that's what we do. We do very small area estimates. Nonetheless, we think that you need to, the precinct boundary is a boundary that, again, it agrees with our supervisor of elections. That's what they like to, know what's moving. And also, again, it's something that people can relate to, as opposed to like the corner of, Bush and those things. It's better like you vote in precinct, you vote in this lodge, in this church. People are more related to that. The only thing that we're required to do is 2 public hearings. That's it. So we can do the maps, do the 2 public hearings, and be done. Nonetheless, we have a long tradition of engaging with the public. Not only this project, but any project that the planning commission does is about engaging, being face-to-face, and putting the boots right there on the ground and meeting the people. So we have 6 open houses, typically, or more. And we also attend all sorts of neighborhood meetings. We're gonna talk about those, but again, just for the record, the planning commission only required 2 public hearings. And again, there are typically, so this is 201 specifies the number of public hearings, and then 803 specifies the, when are the hearings happening. So again, you see there's some disjointed things. This is, do or die, not sure. You have to make sure, but it will be probably better if you can kind of fuse this 2 sessions together and then kind of, harmonize the requirement. But in the list of priorities that you have, not sure if that's something that we're having. We're not here to be pushing for that, but it's something that if you needed suggestions, there's one area though that's in red here that we would like for you to pay some attention to, which is the time. Now, we would like more time, so we would love the timeline on the 2.01. That means that gives us until June to come up, to get the process concluded. But and the lawyers in the room and the lawyers here, they always say the earlier date is the best day. If you file the earliest date, that way you didn't get to miss it. You don't want to wait until the last minute. So the lawyers in the city say, no, we need things by April 1st. And so those are the supervisor election. And 803 says April 1st. So there is a discrepancy here. This one allows us to go to June with our process, but this one is April. So again, no big deal, but it's something that it could be a benefit from some harmonization, if you will.
So is 803, I don't understand how that could be, because that's sort of in conflict. So does one supersede the other, like section 201 versus section 803?
That's why they were the box, and they were like, the earlier date. But we don't know how which one supersede the other. This one says that it's valid, but this is under related laws. It's like there's some things there that I think benefit a more, more fresh look and more, but again, not sure what we're saying. Yes, sir.
I was just gonna say, was one added after the other, and
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't have that detail. Yes, sir.
I was gonna say something. So you mentioned section 8.03 is in the related articles?
Yeah,
I mean, sorry, okay, cause I looked, just for anybody else who's flipping through the chart. It. We have not, as you know, you had like two sections, like slimmed down version and all the related laws, so for anyone else who's looking. My
Oh,
question,
thank you for bringing it up, to me, this is why this is the stuff we struggle with, so I'm glad that this is happening. Yes, indeed, yes.
I was just gonna say, the related laws are, which one goes first? The related laws started from the laws of Florida, which back in the days of yore, before we had home rule, and this was actually a little bit after we had home rule. It was before we had home rule, you got your power by local laws from Florida or general laws, but often local laws, and this one looks like it's 79, so it's after home rule was established. But they still did a lot of local laws back then, and now it was amended by ordinance, so some of the local laws, I believe, under home rule were then able to be amended by ordinance, and I am not sure which one comes first, but it's different than the charter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an important question, I just don't know.
It's something that, should the group desire, we can make this clearer in the charter.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean.
Like it should be.
Yeah. Well, those timelines are distinctly different, well, I'm
Yes.
the advocates are for them, so I need to think that through, I mean, it seems like. It would be hard to be in charge of what you're trying to do as planning commission, you've got that disparate of a window.
At the same time, if I may, you know, like the April 1st one also is more agreeable to the election process, because the earlier the candidates and everybody knows when, where they're sitting, the better it will be for them. June is kind of getting into the late process, so that's why we also made a very amenable, we did not, we just comply. Any questions before we start?
I don't know if you'll get to this, but is there any either local, statewide or national standard in terms of if there is population growth or attraction, changing the numbers of seats on the council?
We have a couple of slides that will share on another section of this presentation, so very excellent question, but yes, we're gonna go back to that, yes, sir.
Just a comment, based upon my observations of the last few city council redistrictings, because it happens so frequently, the changes are always very minor. It's just something to keep in mind, because when you see the term redistricting, you're thinking, oh my gosh, they're gonna change everything, because they do it so frequently. That lends itself to only making minor changes, so that you don't have to make a lot of waves each time, and I think that's a very good thing that we should also keep in mind, we don't want to create a process that. Could then be used to make massive changes, because that's not necessarily the intent.
Any other questions? So equal population is the standard that we use to, move precincts amongst council districts. And this is how. We don't use voting age population. We don't use population by race. Nonetheless, we as planners, as economists, we serve the communities that we live in. And there are communities like, community, African American community that may feel that they want to be represented by people that look like them. And they want that to be in one of the criteria. So we are sensitive to that. But at first blush, what we use is population. Now, there's been some discussion through the feedback that we received just recently that should the charter include some language that's saying the planning commission should consider these other things. Because the charter is very clear about only population and population balancing, but doesn't mention everything else. So it is something that you all need to be considering. It's a feedback that we received, and we just pass it along. Any questions about why the planning commission uses population exclusive?
What was the feedback? What was the feedback example?
The feedback is like, why don't we use something else besides in addition to population? Why don't we use or in the age population or somebody? But let's say like we have a. If you use our population, you include children, you include people that are, that don't actually vote. As part of the council district, should we look at something else besides, in addition to that? And that should be explicitly stated in the charter.
Okay.
Should that be explicitly stated in the charter? Because right now it's not.
Okay, so as far as age, you would say like voting age, 18 and over.
Yeah, it should be able to do that, should be able to balance this, or the number of voters, of this, it should be this in certain districts.
Okay.
Like should be the majority, for example, it could be something like, it should be the majority of voters on this, on this one district should be, X, Y, and Z, X, Y, Z. But that is something again that this body needs to consider, just passing this along, yes, simply.
The Supreme Court is about to rule on whether race can be used in terms of congressional redistricting. Is that going to have an impact on this process?
No, because we're not, because again, we go right here and we say, we use the population. Nonetheless, the feedback that we received from people, meeting people face to face was, why are we only using that? Why can't we use anything else? Like there are places where you have a lot of children and they count, and should we have just adults, as well, things like that.
You've received some input, but have there been any problems with using the equal population? There's been no issues, okay.
Well, also, again, we have also been sensitive to input from the community, right? So this is not something that we do in the dark, in the darkness. We are this done in light, and feedback is received, and again, people vote on this and things like that.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you would consider to be a problem, because
I was asking you.
right now, every district doesn't necessarily have the same number of registered voters. I'm not saying that's a problem, but somebody that attends one of the meetings might say, why, it doesn't make any sense, so.
Right, I would
Yes, ma'am.
just kind of piggybacking off of him, if you have a community or a district that has a lot of retired people that sit at home and have time to go to meetings and be involved, great, but there may be some districts where they don't have that. They may have a lot of children, they may have elders that don't have rides to use, or like, so the resources can get the spaces. So, and that's just like, not saying that you don't think there's a problem, I'm just saying that it is a problem in some districts.
Well, I'm not following. If there's equal population, the district with little children would be equally represented with another district that had more engaged. Unless I'm not following this, but it seems to me that you'd want to make sure that even if they didn't have the number of voting people in that district, they had a lot of kids or whatever the case may be. I think we'd all agree you want to take care of that district, just like you would a district with, maybe downtown, for instance, full of voters. I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it.
Any other questions, just some comments?
Two things, so you're saying people are asking you these questions, why can't we do this or that, and it's not because it's not in the charter, it's because it's federal law. US Constitution, Supreme Court.
Yeah, exactly.
We can't do that,
Exactly.
and then,
Yeah, yes, I wouldn't say you can do that, that's not my position, my position is to forward the feedback.
the Constitution says we have to do this, there might be misunderstanding.
No, the further discussion, we use population.
Okay.
But the feedback was, can something else be used?
And the answer is no.
Okay, that's the answer, but anything else?
Yeah, just another point,
We have people now that don't.
we won't go there. So to Bill's point, I think you underscored why the importance of how districts are composed. So for example, if they're, and it's just kind of spitballing here, but in some cities, they have residential at large districts where you have to live in a certain geographic area. But the entire city votes for that representative. So we don't have that in Tampa, and I wouldn't want that, but I think it gets kind of nuanced and, good stuff.
Yes,
Do you know, from a comparative standpoint, at least in Florida, do cities do the redistricting as often? I mean, are we in that zone of like every 4 years is sort of the norm? Or is that?
we didn't know, that we don't have information about that. But what we do have information again is the population per se,
Yeah.
and things like that. Now, we being one of the persons that's most informed about these trends, 4 years is, I think, is actually something you want to keep up, because again, you will be shocked by how many cities don't grow like this. So in the US.
Thank you.
Any other questions about this?
So just a comment, because I looked it up. District 5 has 42,000 registered voters, District 4 has 63, so 20,000 more in District 4.
But the population would be the same, is that what we're saying?
It's a heck of a lot closer than this.
Yeah. So the voting population.
I'm sure you'll think true.
So the range, That's what we use. The range is just a percentage that we say. If it says like 8%, that means that the most populous district, that was in this case, according to census data, District 7, the least populous districts, that was District 5, they were 8% apart. So that's what we use like a percentage term, to say, how percent. Ideally, we would like to have it within 5%, and that's what we've done every time we did it. There's a discussion also about census data. We got feedback. Why are you using 2-year-old data? We are a fast growing city. Why is this data old? The charter allows you to use two things. You can either use the census or you do your own population. I would love to use my own numbers. I think my numbers are superior to these numbers. Nonetheless, again, modesty aside, but you own the planning commission. If we decide to do our own population, we will have to own the results. And if it's a challenge, we'll have to defend the population and defend the districts. It's best to go with the federal data. I always like to I love my data. I also like to use other people's data. So in this case, loving the use of data. And the way the project is designed, you would always be 2 years behind in terms of census data, unfortunately. When we were doing it back in 2022, it was the 2020 census that we were using. So it's always like that. So again, the fee grows, but on a 2-year period, it's not gonna be that super significant. But again, people did mention that, and that's why we wanted to put it up. So what about voting precincts? We have 122 voting precincts in the city of Tampa. And they range in sizes. They go from acres between 5 acres all the way to 7,000 acres. So that's another thing that adds to the complexity of this project. In terms of like, you cannot just pick a precinct at random. It's not a hexagon. It's not tessellation. So it goes from like the McDill district here, South Tampa, all the way to this very exactly one block district, 248 there. So whenever you pick, you have to. They're not all gonna qualify as a movable because you can bring in way too many people and then make it worse. Any questions about voting precincts? And again, we use them because as a partial elections, that is what they want us to use. And also, again, it's easier for anybody else to say, we're moving the whole precinct. We also are able to locate voters like we did with this one and say, your precinct is moving. Let us know what you think. So things like that. So out of 122, we're only able to move 29 of them. So it's only a fraction that we're able to move. Again, that's why we want to walk a tightrope between, do we notify everybody and alarm everybody? Or do we just say, hey, some of you might be affected by this, they want to pay attention. So that's the tightrope we want to walk in. We don't want people to complain, no, I never knew about this. It doesn't affect you. 95% typically of the people that live in Tampa are, continue their merry way, nothing affects them. But there are 29 potential precincts. And notice they're all different sizes, different locations. Now, there's also a very peculiar shape of the city of Tampa. It's not a blob, it's not a square, it's not a circle. So you have this elongated with narrow necks that also makes things complicated in terms of precinct. There's only so many precincts you can move out of here before you cut it off and become a split district, which is something we don't want, as far as we can tell, yes. So what do we usually encounter in terms of differences? Back in 2002, we encountered a significantly larger difference in the past. 24%, then we do 12% difference between the least populous and most populous, and we were able to reduce them accordingly. But of late, again, we're getting more sophistication, the census is getting better, variety of things are happening. The city also is growing there are very few areas of the city that are not the size compared to 20 years ago. There are very few areas of this city right now, even downtown, everybody, 20 years ago, used to come out to, Tampa Theater, it was a different experience than now, let's just say. And again, it's a very sad way, so that's why I'm saying cities growing all over, so that allows us to have, again, smaller differences, and again, be able to do that. But notice also precinct. How many precincts have we actually moved? 9, 7. So again, lower and lower precincts that we moved before. So any questions about how much impact we're having on a per project basis? So have we notified everybody? Yes, we have notified thousands of people that we're doing this. We were blessed this time around because of all the controversy statewide and national about redistricting. We got a lot of news coverage, which is not usually the case, so we were able to harness that for good. We will also do some spamming for democracy, which is we call emailing people in the precincts and say, hey, your precinct is about to change. Let us know what's going on. Again, we had an online form. So again, we were super excited by the participation. This is my second time at the helm of this, and this is one of the most vibrant and exciting participation that we've had so far. And again, we were also messaging very, very from the message about everything. So that also generated interest. So again, this is what happened. We tried, because the meetings are at night, and venue choices are kind of limited. So we did our best in terms of spreading the meetings.
Do you have 100 at each one of those 6 public hearings?
No, just tomorrow, yeah, for that, yes, tomorrow. There were people were doing Facebook Lives, it was amazing, it was like, democracy is just beautiful, it works. So, and again, this is just adapted to just one precinct that we moved 345 from Council District 7 to Council District 5, and that's it. So we try to be, our goal is to be the least disruptive that we can. Yeah, most people are, if we can achieve it with one move, we go ahead and achieve it with one. Any questions about redistricting? Okay, so this is another part of the question that you said. What about council seats and comparative statistics? This is not easy to do. We have 23 American cities that we looked at, between 400,000 and 600,000 population. So we're forward looking, it's more prospective looking. But people could argue, for example, that Jacksonville should be in here, but it's a whole county. So it's just like there are also cities when you're looking at a city like Baltimore, they have a council member that's the council president that's elected citywide. Are they member of the council or are they not? So it's one of those things. So if they are in these numbers, you'll see. So and also when you have a manager, does that affect? Is the mayor now able to do more outreach than what they are doing, like hands-on? So is that affecting representation? So it's tough to make this comparison. So again, we just gonna present the numbers here. You're welcome to do your own research on this and look at your own and slice it however you like. Bring some maybe more Florida cities if you like. But again, we looked at 23 American cities and between 4,000 and 600,000, and we look at what kind of council members they have. So let's start with the number of council seats. Yeah, 23 American cities. Councils, so Tampa has 7. The average is actually 9. With the average at large is 1, and the average single member is 8. So again, we are a little below average. This is some large, for Atlanta, for Minneapolis, and for Milwaukee, it's a lot larger, council seat, number of council seats. Okay, just presenting information here, it's up to you to decide what to do with the information. So think of it as one data point in your decision matrix. And so we do it. Okay. The other one is this. What about, you're telling me global council members. What about single members? Those are districts that are represented by, that are tied to geography. Tampa has 4. It appears that the average is 8. And again, it can go as high as 15, and that would be in Baltimore 15. But again, Milwaukee is also single members there. So, any questions about the number of councils? Yes.
Not about the seats, but I'm sure this will, well, I guess it has to be, this will be uploaded as part of something that we could review, because there's a lot of data here that's.
Yeah, on your SharePoint. So your SharePoint drive for the gentleman.
Yeah, it's there.
Facilitator, yes, the facilitator, yes. You just upload that very recently, but you will definitely leave it out there. Yeah, we definitely.
Has Tampa ever added city council seats?
I believe in the past they used to be all at large and then they went to single members, I believe, and I'm not sure if they added some at that point. But there might be, there might be other people that have better.
Yeah, but so as the population grows, there's no formula then.
There's no formula. Because notice that it's a very large difference between 400,000 and 600,000. So they notice how now it's more better. Some people will argue, you can argue both ways on that. Chicago has, I believe, So again, so when we say that Chicago, you know, if you're from there, grateful, lovely city. So people say that that's, you know, so some people may say yes, what's happening, so, well, they're not included here, they have a larger population, but just give you an example. Now, what about seats per person, which is a gentleman mentioned? So we have here two metrics. Population just for all council seats, whether they are large or single member. Tampa seats at 59,000. You know, persons per council seat, you know, per 7 council seat, per each council of the 7. Now, there are as high as 100,000, 97 here, 92 here. So again, in the average for per council district is 58. So we are slightly above average, just like, you know, like our population is slightly above average. So there we're not sitting that bad. Now, how about population per geography based district or single member district? That is, we are the highest. We are 103,000 people per geographic district versus the average is 68. So just giving you an example there, so that's why I say. To conclude, just wrapping everything up here, so again, but we have a dynamic city, a city that's, you know, growing. All parts of the city are growing, we've seen it, we've seen all planning districts are growing, some more than others. Central Tampa is really going to get a lot of growth, you know, as we've seen, but again, 73,000 Tampa residents. Again, you know, plus 60,000 since 2015. Jobs are, 30,000 jobs again, plus 19,000. So again, these are numbers that are coming in 2035. Planning districts, except for New Tampa, the other 4 planning districts expect to attract more new residents. So the growth they've seen, they're going to have more growth, except for New Tampa. And again, we know New Tampa is some of the places we have built out, and you have you know, things like that. But you know, and again, it's larger lots there. But in all the places, you're going to see more density. 56% of residents in Central and South Tampa, so that's a lot of growth there. 44% in jobs in Central Tampa and 21% in West Shore TIA. So again, West Shore is red hot in terms of attracting more jobs. And again, we see it with the development of the West Shore Shopping Center there, which is going to be a mixed use situation there. So yes. Redistricting, again, governed by 2 sections, section 2.01, that's in the charter, and then 8.03 in related laws. How do they relate to each other? There will be other people that will know, but they supplement, complement, and conflict with each other in slight ways. But there's a lot of major conflict. We're not talking about, but there is some conflict, especially in the time of, for example. We concluded the process, only moved 1 precinct. So again, we have a light touch when it comes to the district. We only try to disrupt the least amount of people possible. And again, that's it pretty much. Thank you.
Very well done, thank you. I have a question. Yes. No, I'm the right one to answer, but thank you. I've read the commission, county, they're looking at expanding the number of seats, if I read correctly.
They did look at it with a charter review as well, but it did not go far forward. Nonetheless, there is a bill in the House. I mean, there might be a bill that maybe go to the governor's desk that will do that, that will increase the commission and also, you know, tie that to a population increase. So as a result, you know, they will have like targets. You know, that may be why that did not prosper. In terms of like, you know, at the charter review level, people were, that was already being discussed, the whole legislative change. So that may have been, yes, but this is
Specific to Hillsborough County or state?
I
think it does still have to go on the ballot in November.
Yes.
And it was on the Hillsborough County Charter Review Committee too, so she may have insights on why.
Yes.
What was it, sir?
The way they did. Well, Tom, go ahead.
We have your question.
The fact that it was in the legislature, it was pending the legislature at the time, didn't affect our decision at all, we just thought it was a bad idea.
Okay.
Especially since it was sort of mixed in with going to full single member districts and county-wide. So we decided not to, but the legislature went forward with the
Yeah, they looked at it all sorts, they looked at, do we go to all singles, should we go to partial, should we go to like more, or same with all singles, so it was like, it's took several meetings for them to come out. To a.
Well, what is the legislature doing? It's 9 single member districts? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's what it
Yes.
is.
That's exactly what we voted down.
I'm saying that.
We can share the legislation.
And they would be, if they did do that, that would take place at when? Also with that.
We will have to go to
The ballot for referendum.
If the governor signs,
And then it would like be the next,
it would go into, right, it phases in and then over.
okay. And then y'all would have to do this.
No, we're.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't do this process.
But it still has to pass the popular vote.
Yes.
It's a law, it's not just the legislature. So we'll have a chance to vote on it, I guess.
Just 2 easy questions. The first one is, how does the county compare in terms of representative to total number of constituents? Ballpark, more or less than.
I don't, so there's 7 of them as well, right, so they're like 1.5%. It's 200,000, around 200,000.
Yeah, it's much higher representative to population, even with the 9.
Yeah, yes. But again, counties will have, then you need to compare to counties, like, you need to gather data on counties that are similar population and do that, that's always, it's kind of.
And then my second question, which I know you can answer, okay, is you gave us a very excellent summary about growth in the city. Can you, like, short version, how did that look like in the county? Is the county growing a lot faster than the city? Is it growing slower than the city? Are they responding to a much more urgent issue than we might be?
There's definitely some areas of the county that are growing faster than the city, not the county as a whole per se. As a matter of fact, DBR is they put out projections and it's appeared to be on a downward trend for the county. But the city again has its own momentum. And again, they can change their, this is a lot of tough to really, under the high interest rates that we're having, under the uncertainty that we're having, is, that's also been filtered into the projections. Once that's cleared up, then the things can turn around again, yes. Because the conditions that attract people to this area are going to be there. So they're gonna be functioning again, yes.
In a hypothetical, if Tampa were to add more city council districts, what would that process? Have to re-carve all of do the data analysis to make the populations equal? I guess it depends on the form of the council and the composition of the types of districts that we choose, at large per single member, et cetera, but like broadly, what would the process be?
The planning commission will be available to provide technical assistance, but there's like the whole process, we don't have experience in that. How to get.
Different, typically we provide a number of different scenarios as part of the redistricting process. They're usually pretty simple. As Yasser described, I think that if we were to be changing the number of districts, it would have to be a much more robust process to look at a lot more scenarios to get input from the community on what that looks like. And even in this last effort, we got feedback from Forest Hills. They didn't want to be separated from other parts of Forest Hills. So, trying not to separate different parts of neighborhoods and understanding all of the dynamics would take a considerable amount of time. So I do think it would be a much more robust effort than what we.
You also not supposed to.
That first.
You also not allowed to, per the charter, I believe, a district council person. So that's gonna have to be taken into account. All the choices will need to be taken into account in terms of like how you place that.
Right.
So that's another, wrinkle, a fly in the ointment, if you will. Not difficult, we've seen that already, we have the technical know how to do this, but it is something how to, from soup to nuts right now. That will be something, but we will follow similar, like Ms. Rita said, similar to the districting, but more wider scale. It may require, because we're getting 3,000 voters versus 12,000 people. We would need to contact a ton of people. This could be significant.
But you can do it.
In terms of providing alternatives,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, of course. Ken, if we don't, if this body doesn't suggest this beyond the ballot, how else, let's say 5 years from now, if the population continues to increase at this pace, how else can the number of city council members be changed?
The city council can put this on the ballot.
They can put the, any year,
And just remember, everything you're doing is just recommending to.
No, I understand that, but they can do it, it's not a,
Right,
every 4 years.
it's another charter.
It's just every election cycle.
And I think that's what our question was, if there was a process for this, because we know it might not happen right now. But in the future, we're trying to think about things in the future, and like you said, the next time this charter review commission comes together. That may be a conversation, 8 years, 8 years from now. So there, we might want to 9 city council people.
So I guess the question is, do we establish a process? If there's a tripwire in terms of, you reach a certain population. And, you know, I'm going back to, you know, one of our mission statements is, you know, identify a problem that needs to be fixed. It's not a problem today, it could be a problem 10 years from now. And would it behoove us to set up that process? The other question is, even if our population grows by what is projected here, with the current number of members of the city council, even if it was increased population, would it be out of the, or beyond what the national average or what other similar sized cities do in terms of the number of seats on city council?
I think at that point we will have to do a reassessment. What is going on with those cities then?
I would say too, I think from the information yesterday that you provided, the number of the population per council, it was similarly situated cities, it wasn't all cities, right?
Right.
And so as a city goes from being a small to mid city to a bigger city, New York, Los Angeles, and Atlanta, you would presume that there would be more constituents per council. Like New York would have 700 person on city council. But the peer, but it's a peer group, the question is, are we, because we're growing so rapidly, you know, 10 years from now, that would be our peer group.
Maybe Atlanta, right?
Can you go in,
With the
Oh, yeah.
But I submit it would be our. No, it would be because it's 400 to 600. That's the group.
Yeah.
So we're only gonna, we're at the low, we're staying here, we're not gonna be above 600.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Gotcha.
You know, we're gonna be above 600.
No, I don't think we are, I think that's gonna be our peer group, because that's where that group came from, was this.
I was gonna say 5, 6, we still would have only 5,000.
You could consider along the balance suggestions, like if you get to more than 150,000 per member, that there should be some consideration of. Is that what you're thinking, like at a minimum, sort of be.
Yes, ma'am.
When you look at those numbers, yes, we do have higher numbers, but those other governments aren't necessarily situated as we are. I think most of them were single member districts. And you can't compare that to our single member districts when if you put a precedent on the importance of having some citywide votes.
Right.
There's so much information that was given. I mean, I don't know if everyone wants to just talk a lot about it and not make a decision, but I'm not comfortable making a decision because this was super helpful. But there's so much nuance in it, and just to pull out saying, wow, we are way out of whack with comparative cities, I don't think we're actually digging into, are we really?
And like I said earlier,
Yeah.
I never visualized the sample.
Right.
You're going to may have different numbers. Again, if you compare to Jacksonville, for example, you compare to more Florida cities, you may be actually not that.
I mean, Jacksonville is a lot bigger, it's also a consolidated form of government, and they also have 19.
Yeah, maybe yes.
19.
But when you divide by people, then you can kind of get it.
And also, when you look at some of those governments that have a whole ton of people and smaller things, they may prioritize, not getting things done, because you have 19 people, and not saying that Jacksonville is not getting things done, but there are different priorities in how you want to get things done, and also some of them focus their governments in a more, you know, you might have 4 or 5 people who are focused on a bureau, right? And they control the bureau. We don't work that way in the city. There's just so many nuances that, well, there's just so much food for thought.
It's just population.
And not.
Yes, the seats are taking a lot of issues.
I agree. And to your, if I might,
Yes,
and your point and Alan's point, one of the things I've struggled with is how do we determine if it is a problem? I mean, I guess the ultimate deciding factor would be if it does go on the ballot and voted up or down, right? That's the final answer to that question. But you're exactly right, there's just so much nuance, there's so many different forms of government in terms of ways councils can be composed. And I agree, I need to look at this for quite a while to kind of fill out my thought process on this.
But also that we need to think about, and I think Joe mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, is if we did do this, it would be adding some of the significant cost to the city in terms of salaries and staff. And so that's something to consider, but on the other hand, you know, kind of what I heard from the county charter review is there were so many issues that came up that it's so complicated, let's not do it. And I don't know if that should govern what we do or not do that. It's a difficult thing, but I guess that the bottom line is it reasonable to have just continued population growth, but the representation on the city council does not keep up with that? So it's at least something to consider. And we may not be able to reach this question now. The question is, do we try to look into the future and say that there probably should be some kind of process to consider whether this needs to be done? Yeah.
I think we should definitely discuss it, but after we're finished up with you, we want to thank you for your time and everything, but this was just based on population.
Yes.
Strictly population, so it didn't take into account a certain form of government. I mean, some of these municipalities might have more power in the council rather than.
oh, yes, there are some that the mayor is like, the president of the council chair. So,
And that dynamic matters a lot, right? So I think to your point.
if you have a city manager, all those things are again, as I said earlier, that also affects, you know, how much you can have an extra person engaging the community there. So again, even though you may be lower on the council side, but the mayor is fully to engage on a daily basis versus a mayor that's more executive and have to run the cities, if you will.
That was one thing about the structure of the mayor, city council liaison.
Did the city council give any comments on this section when it came up? In terms of recommendations?
They asked us to consider whether or not this was something that we should.
Hence the answer.
As a whole, I didn't take that as a direction that they felt that we should, it's just something that we should.
Vet it out.
In my opinion, you go back to the map, it clearly District 5, I know they're all equal, but when you look at the map, clearly some are bigger than others. It covers a wider range, which means you have a more, I guess a lot of people that, a lot of areas that I guess you have to consider where potholes are, or groups of people coming to you for different things that are local or whatever. Eventually, I think though, it is probably gonna grow, though I think that the council is going to grow. Now, whether it's within our lifetime, I don't know, but I think eventually it is going to happen. Because it's just a wide range of space and events to attend to.
And you may have to see how the county fares. This may be, as they say, you're learning somebody else's head. maybe.
How they can navigate.
What the feelings of them expanding and how everything going, does it feel like it's working better? Maybe that will influence future CRBs to think about this different, or to actually consider this. Now, and also, this is public record, so there's no need to, the county at that point estimated $1 million to set up, rearrange things, so you need to have, office space, you need to have staff space, and also like $1 million a year to run, which again, sounds like a lot of money, but it's not a big percentage of the county budget. It is a significant amount of money for the average person. To run, so it's $1 million to set up and $1 million to run. For their numbers, there were two councils, they were gonna add 2 council.
Commission members.
2 commission members.
2 aides.
Yeah, 2 aides each,
Different than.
and a different, they have a salary, they contribution to pensions and all that, so again, to give you an idea, maybe it's lower, but that is like a top, what it could be. So again, you need to have that space, if you don't have that space, that's gonna complicate matters. Any other questions?
Thank you.
The only thing I would say is if there's ways to look at, you said harmonizing 201 or 801 and 803 or 200, is there a way to consolidate those into one guidance platform?
I do have a question about, it's exactly the same thing, so but that's not 801 or 803 to the charter, they don't get related laws, so. Who we can change?
The city has become.
We're not, even gonna do the back part, can we change?
The ordinance,
What it comes down to is if there's a fear that the language in the charter isn't clear enough, we can certainly emphasize that. What I'd like to see is what the city attorney's opinion was in harmonizing those two, and we can ask for a copy of that. Given that people.
Who has the authority to change the related laws, I guess.
Well, right, they're passed by the legislature, they can be then amended via the charter process, how it's carried out. I'll need to take a look, just to see how they're seeing a conflict. But I would have had the same legal advice, you take the earlier date, if it's done, you get it accomplished. It's just a question of whether we need something else.
Yeah, I mean, I guess since we're sending recommendations forward, it would be helpful to know if there's anything from the related laws that city council alone has to act on. As an accessory to our recommendations, especially if they're related, but it's not, looking at the citations at the end of each of those sections, it's not clear. Is that coming from state law, or is that just something that's put in here and council can decide they want to change it along with sending a recommendation forward?
But if we like the things that are in the committee, we could add those to the chart.
I mean,
It's sort of a reverse of to your
it would be helpful for us to know that we can do that or not.
recommend that.
Stephen, your question is, can we have a charter based on what we see on the data calls, but, right, is that right? Let me ask the question, Ken. Is first, is review of the related laws within our jurisdiction, of the commission, that's. We can look at it as a source.
You can look at it for source, you can make recommendations however you wish for your council, but your direction is still.
Yeah, okay, thank you, that's all.
Given the planning commission flag, there's been a controversy. I'm curious myself as to how.
So would you suggest as we review the charter that we also consider that there may be related laws that clarify how the charter provisions are being implemented?
Okay, think about the related laws and the ordinances as all doing that. Basically, the charter is setting the framework, the constitution for the city. Then the ordinances and other laws that have been passed are implementing all of that. So I would certainly, if you're going to change something in the charter, I would look to see how it's implemented from the ordinance side. And the related law side, just to make sure it already cover what you're trying to do, do you think it needs more emphasis in the charter?
So it's possible, and I know you've already told us that you were gonna look into it, but the subject may have to be. It's possible that the charter says a time frame 180 days, and then by ordinance, you could set a solid date within the 180 days, it's almost.
It's not a charter.
Yeah,
Right.
got the message.
Right, and there may also have been changes in state law and changing the deadlines, because the legislature likes to change our election laws every time we meet. So you have different deadlines that then come up. So there's maybe some of that that's also occurred.
Thank you.
Do you guys want a break before we jump in? Or do you want to push forward? We're roughly at the halfway mark last time. I just requested a break.
I'm gonna take a bathroom break, so that's when she pushing when she wants. Definitely take it.
Do you guys want maybe a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Let's take that. We can start.
We have a. What, was your question is like, section one, you didn't make the changes, we would vote now on section one and you done with this, or not done with it, but come back to it, you need to come back.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, I was more concerned with textual changes we made. Think about it as concepts of we're drafting a 50-page contract and we go into a negotiation session. We don't wait 8 months of negotiating and then back and draft all the contract language and say that it's okay. One, I was just afraid that we would use our institutional language. We didn't see the changes that we were talking about in our full text.
Right. Well, I think that it's great that and share that we were actually going to discuss if we need to revisit what was said a few months ago, one more time ago. And I'm not saying like during the meeting, you're not gonna do that right then during the
But
meeting,
we might
but.
talk about something for an hour, and it's 2 sentences and a chart, so.
They're talking, you're still.
Oh.
Yeah, we can go to the.
If you guys want to take 5 minutes.
Go ahead, you can't, it didn't start yet,
Can't debate each
you
other.
can't talk after.
Right.
After we break.
7:30.
Sorry.
I got you, so silly. You know, I get it. This particular, I'm Brett.
There's.
What I've seen here is that essentially it's very early. Where not those like where the computer.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna get started. Thank you for returning. I was going to do this anyway, it relates to what we talked about earlier. Give you a status check against all of the sections of our previous articles in the action items. We haven't done that, I promised to do it last time. We may be actually able to tackle some things where we have all the answers, we think we need so far. So that's where we stand at the moment. I captured two actions. One is to share the county related redistricting legislation. And the other is to talk to the city attorney without syncing that law with the charter section, so I've got those. And then the other thing I talked to Ken about is you guys discuss the future, right? So maybe now's not a time. There's nothing precluding us from having general recommendations in a final report that gets attached to the charter changes that can make recommendations to the next charter review commission or even to the council that go beyond textual changes in the charter itself. So let's keep that in mind and we can compile that together. So recapping where we started, we're through section Article 5, but this is important because we did make good progress since last time. I'm going to point to it, keep us grounded in where we were. So for Article 1, that's when it was pretty easy going, no changes recommended or requested by the group, so that remains as is. 201, we just completed the action to get the planning commission here, which I think everyone enjoyed and learned from. And we had an outstanding question to the city attorney, determine whether city council can amend the redistricting completed by the planning commission after it is submitted to the council. Or pursuant, usually something comes after that. It sounded like we got somewhat of an answer earlier, saying the council can push us forward for a ballot vote anytime we want it. But that's on the list for the city attorney. This was
That's
one.
what Ken said, that's not what the planning commission said. Just.
Yes, thank you, I'm sorry, yes, Ken, thank you. This would be an example where I think we come back to 2 when we have all the answers, but I just wanted to see what we had. For this one, when we get back here, when I took notes originally, I didn't have a clear up or down decision on this, so I just want to revisit with everyone. This has to do with the timeframes, start of term, etc. Sorry. Okay. For this one, we have two completed changes in the charter itself. Again, when we come back here, we can see this, but you guys can see it at any time. We changed wording expedient to expedient necessary. Again, in the charter with changes, you can see what that is. Ken updated the words around what compel means and chose a different word. Again, small edits, but important edits. Those are in there for you to review. We spent a lot of time with Scott on the topics of the city and council attorneys. We requested last time, it was worded as it would be useful to us if the council chair could perhaps attend, since the council attorney was precluded from doing so. And the chair's aide is looking into this to confirm if and when the chair might attend. We didn't get a no to that question. We just didn't get a yes with a date, so we're tracking. Here, there was a comment made that found in the budget wasn't proper language for the charter, wasn't charter-esque, and Ken's made that update as well. Again, if you see the charter edits, and I do have the document open and can show you, but we'll get back to that when we have all the answers to this one. We asked about the limits to administrative actions. That's an outstanding action with Scott and his team. I also spoke to Scott today, and he said all answers to the questions he currently has will be given to Ken and me by this Friday. So when I get those, I will bake those directly into this and notify you. I typically do all my work on this on Sunday morning, so I should have it by then. But you will get a chance to see the answers in advance of our next meeting. This was one where we asked for changes to make sure the language included pursuant to state law or similar in case it is modernized, and Ken's completed that. And we checked on a state chapter reference, which can. So we've actually made progress on this, but we just need to get to a point where we have all our answers. These are all no changes. The rest are 2. This one is one I would like to talk about a little bit with the group now, if we don't mind, because we got an answer that might be enough for us. To run this to ground as either changes or no changes. So if you remember, we talked about the clerk and we really dug into. The question around residency requirements, in this case, the charter stipulates that. The clerk must be a resident of the city. You remember we had the conversation about department heads, we thought maybe there are different rules for those, we found out. As of a day or two ago, from Aaron who works for Scott, there are no residency requirements applicable to city employees, including department heads. So again, and then it says beyond those, including the current charter, which applies to elected officials, of course, which includes the clerk. So when we were talking about this, I think the topic was really around talent, access to talent. Are we precluding ourselves from a better pool of talent? We talked about some of the issues around being more invested in your community if you're locally, living locally. I think probably you mentioned that. So given that we did run that answer to ground. What are our thoughts? Because I think that was the only outstanding piece we really talked about or needed more information about. Do we feel we should maintain the language that the clerk should continue to be a resident of the city, or do we, or not? And then my question, we always come back to, and Bill does a great job of reminding us, let's ground it in a problem if we can, something that's either happened or is foreseeable as happening in the future to prevent or mitigate it. But given that everything else I think is fairly straightforward for the group. Any thoughts on this topic in case we can put this in, like I said, either a thumbs up or thumbs down for a charter change body?
So just two points actually. So first, just to clarify, the city clerk is different than all the other department heads in that they must be a resident, but other departments may not.
As the charter for each, yes.
Okay, so the clerk is an exception. And the other question I had on the side is, city clerk may be removed by the mayor, but only with approval of the council. When I've seen approval of the council in other parts, does that mean just 4 out of 7?
Yes.
Okay.
Seriously.
Right, and I just spoke about before, by the way, that I was sitting in the council, it is disappointing. I guess the question is, do we want to keep or remove residency requirements for the role of the clerk? Bill?
I'll start on that, it's a healthy thing to have the city clerk from the city. I don't think it's family owned, I think it's gonna be here on the town. With, you know, 400,000 people.
I think it's,
Good. Let's do.
I mean, I think it's a unique enough. It's a named position of the charter, but it's not. It has its own. Part, but it's not elected. It's an appointed position, so I think the fact that it's unique in that respect. Suggests that maybe it might be appropriate to continue.
Prior to the last charter review commission, the department chairs also had to do it. I'm presuming that I got taken last time. I know we had a discussion about it. Can't remember why. So there was a ton of discussion about it. Why we would not have changed the clerk. There might have been, but it must have been purposeful. I'm sure it wasn't an oversight last time.
Is the clerk in the lineage of any sort of authority if there's like succession or, you know, sometimes the mayor, sometimes he's that's all I think of, is that there is some sort of authority of chain of command position. But I don't know,
It's not elected, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
It's a chain.
it would go to city council,
There's a chair,
Yeah, right.
too.
Oh, it's not change.
Look at the bottom of 6.01, the last sentence, all elected officers and members of boards shall be residents and electors of the city. Someone needs to look at that, so members of boards and then or trustees, you got this whole list of boards. They need to be residents. Yeah, so why would we require? Let's start city clerk. Frank, I'm surprised the other pointed
Bobby, go.
The question, our department, and I was looking at that same paragraph, was about that, the same question, are department heads then also officers? It says in such other officers, departments. Et cetera, which officers and board members, I feel like that term officers refers to departments. So I guess our department heads officers based on that interpretation.
You know, Ken?
No.
It doesn't seem to be that case.
I believe that was specifically taken out charter previously, but I'll have to look at that language. Think about it.
The issue last time was that there were at least one, but I think there were multiple department chairs who did not live in the city limits. And for a number of years, they kept them in an interim position. And the issue that was before us was if we're doing it in practice already, we're having a department chair, why not change it? Yeah, it was a debated thing in the multiple meetings, but my recollection is we also decided to eliminate that requirement because in practice it wasn't going to be followed. It made the distinction you make about being the clerk having a special position, because it's not just an employee of the city, it was running a department, it's a little bit different. So maybe that's why it was kept differently.
Does anyone not want to keep the requirement that the clerk be a resident? That's really the question on the table. I haven't heard comments, but not anyone saying, okay, I'm accountable proposals to that.
Question, so I think this is just semantic, but is the office of the clerk a department of the city, or is it like separate from that in some way, separate body?
It is a department created by the charter to perform certain functions. So it's historically been seen at a different level, why it's itemized within the charter.
No, it's supposed to be a way, Bobby, it's in the charter in 3.1, it does refer to the clerk as an independent custodian. So I think it's a little bit different. The department chair reports directly to the mayor and is subject to the mayor. I'm not an expert in this, but I think the clerk has a special role within the city.
Well, and that's why it takes both branches to remove the individual.
I mean, I personally find the term department to be used a lot of different ways in the charter, which is pretty sure I brought that up at the previous meeting. Like the budget is distributed by department, so then what is a department? Is it like 5 people, is it 500 people? I mean, without it being defined, we end up in these situations where.
When I say, I'm reading 601, and it's really confusing. The government of the city shall be conducted by the following named officers and boards: a mayor, city council, city clerk, city attorney, director of finance, and the list goes on and on. And then it concludes at the end saying, all elected, and included in that list, for instance, is the city attorney. All elected officers and members of the board should be residents of the elected city.
So unelected officers.
Elected officers, members of boards,
Also elected officers.
which is a subset.
Elected officers.
Unelected officers.
And members of boards. Okay.
So the
By
clerk is
all of you, but all of you had to be members, had to be residents of the city in order to serve in this capacity. In terms of how the charter you set out, and it's the same for member of the board.
The city attorney.
So this clerk isn't one of those, but is still defined as having the residence required.
So is 601 consistent with the one Ron just read, is 301, because this city says city clerk would be an unelected officer.
But this is in the city clerk's provision, it was an additional requirement about residents.
But does any,
It'll be a
So all appointed appointees have to live in the city? I mean, just in general, they can live in the county, right? But y'all speak specifically for this city clerk, we should change theirs.
well, the city clerk right now, if you leave it as it be a resident.
leave it as it is.
I've not heard anyone say they want to change this, just questions about content.
I want maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I wanna change it, I feel like. I know this amendment already passed, I think, in the last cycle, but I mean, I would like the police chief and the fire chief to live in the city, but they don't have to, and those are really important jobs for the city. And I mean, I would say more.
I think we're back. We can change that back, Bob.
We can set it up, but that's just my thought.
I thought we had a really thorough conversation earlier, maybe this goes back to our institutional knowledge fading rather quickly. about the reasons that we didn't have those people live in the city. Some of it being, the cost of living within the city. Some of it is, yes, we do have 400,000 people, and you think you could find somebody to be a really good local government CFO, but I will tell you that's extraordinarily specialized. If you have one presiding within this area, we're super lucky. So there were a lot of reasons that I supported not doing that. We have had the most amazing clerk for my institutional knowledge. So can I say there's a problem with getting another clerk? I cannot, because we have not been faced with that. But I would say, based upon the logic of what I understood our discussion to be before, I would say it would be consistent. I just can't possibly imagine having a different city clerk, because she's been so amazing and she's been here this entire time. But in the event that she wants to do something else at some point, and we do need another one, that's another pretty specialized position.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby, were you suggesting that you're open-minded to removing the, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, I just want to make sure I understood what you said. That you would be open-minded to removing the residency requirement of the clerk?
I would be for the reasons that Rebecca just cited. I mean, it is a highly specialized field. And thank God we have wonderful clerk staff. They are actually award-winning clerks. They're so specialized that, I mean, I'm tracking with you.
I'm with you on that too, you guys, my feeling is that the elected officials certainly need to live in the city, but. And I don't mean to single out a person, but I remember at the last meeting, we were staffed by Marty Selby, and Marty made the point that he doesn't live in the city, but that's great, no one would argue he's not effective, he's extremely effective for the city council. And my feeling is that you want the best talent for someone who's fully working for the elected officials, they need to live amongst their constituents.
Marty wouldn't be within this group though, right? He's not a director.
Yeah, I think the point was just that, you can live outside the city limits and still be very effective in working for the city.
I agree with you, Bobby, though. I think fire chief, police chief, clerk, I would take it further than that. I mean, park and rec, all of it. If you're taking your kids to a park on a Saturday in Riverview, I don't know how you're supposed to pay attention to the parks in the city. So I agree with your original point. I would like to take it further, but.
Meaning, go make
Yeah,
everything.
I don't wanna, that might be more, to be honest.
Partly, I mean, yeah, partly my point was consistency. I mean, you have all these other, I mean, in my mind, the clerk's kind of I guess it's kind of different, but kind of the same of the department head. They run the show for documents and management of this city. But I mean, either do all or none is what I would say. My preference would be that the clerk could live outside the city limits to be consistent with the other department heads, but maybe I would, it'd rather be all or nothing for me, that's enough.
Either do all of them in or all of them out.
Right.
And we also talked last time about if it's boundless or within county.
That's a question.
Alright, so that's just something I think everybody listening. Because
Preference to a city.
well, I mean, I think. So access to talent was one of the decision factors the groups brought up. The other is the concept of, it's a poor word, but being vested in your community, whether that vesting is as compelling if you live in it or not. I'll let you guys decide what you think there. Affordability, right, so that also factors into pool, right, where people can live. Those that seem to be, and then the consistency factor kind of lays on top of all of it.
As Rebecca said, this is going back to Ron's point at the beginning of the meeting, like we fully had the same conversation. When we first discussed this.
Part of the issue has been that we haven't been able to control the clock on getting answers, so when things take, I can only bring them to you when we get them. But we're gonna catch up. I think Scott being new needed to find his feet, but now a little bit faster, but agree, because you're right, in the heat of the discussion, you bring up things, it is all recorded, this stuff. Steve.
Yeah, and I guess the point maybe that I was trying to make earlier was that I agree with you in terms of consistency, it's unusual, it is unusual. But also, the city clerk is not the same exact thing as a department, and I think it's important that we don't try to make it the same as a department. any of the department heads can be terminated by the mayor without any action of city council. And the clerk doesn't have that because the clerk serves both branches of government, not that department heads don't, I don't think get into that, but I mean, there are nuances to it, so I just think it's important that we, you know, don't just say, oh, well, they're department heads, so let's treat them the same.
Where do you come down on the residency issues, Dave?
I don't currently see a problem that needs to be solved, so that's fine.
Just to get a beat on the group. How many people think we should leave this as it is? Show of hands, just so I can read the room. Alrighty, how many people believe it, the residency requirement should be removed or changed to something else? I know some people never raise their hands at all, so this is. I know, I'm like, oh, I don't know.
You know, I would strongly oppose if you were to eliminate the residency of the city, right? I would really argue and would hope we would at least say resident of Hillsborough County. I just think there's a certain, you know,
I think
you
it's
live here, it's your home.
I don't. It seems like quite a step backwards to me. The city talks about its identity all the time and holding on to what we have. I think this is a step in the wrong direction to allow a position to not live in the city.
Go ahead, Steve, you're next.
I don't have the language in front of me, but I'm almost certain that even for department heads, there was a waiver process that you could petition to continue to live outside the city and got 3 waivers and all that. I don't believe that applied to the clerk, so we're only seeing what currently applies. I don't know that it was consistent even before that was taken out. So just another
Fun fact.
But right now, it's saying they have to live in the city.
Right now, we're, well,
Yes.
totally, well, even if it's still the council's decision, but among this group, we're still here because we haven't coalesced around a majority thought on whether or not that should be removed or changed. Sorry, next.
I would not be supportive on any level of the changes for the department heads, because I've lived through trying to get people in the position and getting top people in the position and the anxiety of them not living and then do they get in it wasn't good, and yet we had really top people in it. I don't think it was a good use of anyone's time to be living that, trying to figure out how to meet that requirement, we'll still get the same people. I saw it, wasn't good. I do agree that there hasn't been a problem. I'm not gonna throw myself in the sword. It hasn't been a request of anyone to look into it.
What do you guys say strongly encouraged to be a resident of the city? Sure.
Should we start?
You get preference if you live here.
Should we start with this clerk and go to the clerk and then maybe have a our discussion about.
Yeah, I agree. The clerk is a very finite example, and that's like, well, hold on, get it wrong.
It hasn't been a problem because the current tenants is the question, because the current clerk that just was in that position for how long is it?
She hasn't been.
So then,
Our.
yes, I thought somebody was saying that. So when was the last time you had a clerk turnover, I guess, is the question.
Over 20 years. And it could be way over.
23.
But part of that may have to do with the fact that they cannot be unilaterally terminated by one branch of government. So again, it goes back to the.
But we don't know in modern times, we don't know whether it would be hard to recruit the right person or not. We have to try to.
Yeah, I thought the same stuff.
Did they retire out? Or they just?
Can I make a statement to help you all?
Yes.
So Shirley's been here for 23 years. She may retire maybe 3-4 years in the future. I am a deputy city clerk, and hey, you all are talking about filling a position with someone that's reliable and capable. And it would be me.
Just like.
Are you a resident of the city? Yeah,
Where do you live?
I live in Gulfport County, but I do not live in the city limits due to the cost of living. That's
Okay.
out there.
You don't live in the city,
That's-
you don't live in the city.
So the way it is now,
Okay, that's.
We're
The salaries, what's the salary?
So I'm just doing this, you know, again, Bill suggested that. And we were going that,
I wasn't advocating for that, I was advocating for if the group wants to eliminate completely residents.
no, I'm tracking, and I was going to say this even.
Yeah.
Before we got the good input from that. One idea would be to require that this person be a resident of the county, show of hands, who likes, just for the clerk, who likes that solution? Resident of the county,
I wanted to make a point.
no one, let me swear.
Go ahead.
And no one is advocating for just being a resident of the county.
Well, I think she was getting ready to bring up the salary thing, right, Ashley?
Yeah,
That's very important.
salary of, what is the salary of the clerk?
I don't know.
And what is the salary of the deputy clerk?
It's very high, and they can move.
It's
Well,
not higher as the other deputy, directors. I'll say that much. Either party or something.
Right.
but the idea would be you would be moved up to that position and make a significant
Amount of money.
amount
It's
more money.
probably
I mean,
about,
I'm guessing right now, but
I'm just guessing right now, I can pull up the information, but maybe $40,000-$50,000 difference.
okay.
What was the total?
So when I asked, so no one was sort of saying that broaden it to the county, so that leaves us either with. Keeping it or moving it, I think, but go ahead, Steve.
Well, my question was clarifying your question, of you saying who is supportive of changing it from city of Tampa to Hillsborough County? Or I'm saying, because I think some people don't care where, so what is the alternative?
So I guess we have a few options. One is resident of the city, one is resident of the county, one is we don't care where you live at all. You could be in those places, or you could be in Pinellas. So those are our three choices, as I say it, for the clerk, so I'm trying to.
And even I support the rest of that last one.
Okay, how many people support no residence requirement at all, city or county?
I think the clerk for him is $175,698 for the salary. I feel like, and I don't know what the deputy and all of you make, but that will be enough to find residency somewhere in the city.
Right, so your point is to say.
100, I don't know,
That-
that's not like me, I don't know what y'all make, but $175,000 is good look.
So what you're saying is if affordability is a reason why some people might be reluctant to keep this. In your opinion, it shouldn't be that big of a deal, it's just a conversation. Okay,
It certainly is a healthy salary.
Be higher.
The city limits extend to the county line, as we just saw. And you can get a pretty good bang for your buck on that salary within the city limits up in North Tampa, just saying.
good, Bobby.
What is the talent pool for clerks? I mean, I feel like it's such a specialized position, I mean, how many clerks are there? Is it just limited to the local governments, or is it kind of like steal one, or? I have no idea how this works, and to dig deeper into the talent question, you know, since we're thinking about those issues, I just kind of. I don't know.
I have a problem paying someone out of our county with our tax dollars to come here and do a job for us. But I really do.
Yeah.
But we have
I don't agree with
thousands
that,
of employees and
that's different.
how is it different?
This is $175,000, what'd you say it was? $175,000. We can't find anyone in the county? Well, alright, I mean.
You want to say shall be a resident of the county or the city? I mean,
Yeah.
I would have optionality there, but I don't know how many around the table do talent searches. Very hard to find people. I just know when I went to Tallahassee, to get people to go to Tallahassee. And if they had to have a place there, usually they get a second place because their family doesn't want to move, because they're all entrenched in their lives, so. I think you gotta balance out the shall to encourage or preferred or something that, yeah, I'd like them to be a resident of the city or the county amendment, but shall is pretty strong.
And we're just making recommendations, not because that's gonna change, so we can say, hey, they.
And honestly, I didn't expect this to be the one where we're getting down to maybe a 45. Like a whole lot of like, this is gonna be an easy one.
Right.
And it's not, but we have some good counterpoints to consider. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. Yeah, Ron.
Can you ask a question? If it was not in the charter, if the residents were promised not in the charter, it still could be
both council and the mayor have to approve the appointment if they hire. So either one or both of council and the mayor could make that a condition of hiring. As long as that, because it's not discriminatory.
Yeah, as long as, well, they didn't violate some other rule.
Is it, a question for me then comes kind of flexibility, right? The mayor can also vote, either the mayor or council, they get reported at their point in time, they go make that decision. Question that's gonna be out of their hands, the charter.
Well, it's been time.
It's been one.
It's been time, and this is what it's been. So-
Yeah, it's already.
Oh, we wanna change it.
Steven,
The only, I mean,
Well, you're right.
I think my opinion is obvious, but the only thing that I would point out that I think is a little bit unfair for that. It's not necessarily clear to me if you have to be a resident of the city at the time of appointment. Or at the time of nomination. And how that actually would play out, because if somebody is gonna need to move here to take a job, if they don't know they're appointed yet. I mean, how would that work? And again, I mean, this hasn't happened recently, obviously, so I know how it works for the department heads when I was in there, because there was a process where if you didn't literally submit a waiver and council approved the waiver, and you could do 3 waivers in a row, but I'm not sure about this.
so that's,
And I think that could definitely hinder who would be willing to throw their name in the hat, because if they're coming for a government, then that government's gonna find out they're playing with us, and I mean, that's a whole can of worms.
Do they still do that labor?
Yeah.
I mean, for people?
I don't know, I can't really find anything to say anymore.
Does that make sense to me, like this woman in the back, right? Like if
can we just pause for a second? What I want each of you to do, because like I said, I expect this to be the thing. Can you summarize your position on this and why very briefly?
Yeah.
So that everyone understands the full group's input. And can give that a little more thought than maybe is happening when they just go around the other.
on the city clerk,
Well,
or
just on this position in this first bullet that says it's a requirement that the clerk be a resident. We do need to work out logistics around timing, but on its face, whether it's before or right after, it's basically the same meeting. So yes,
I think that regarding affordability. There's there's so much more housing supply than there was a few years ago.
in Tampa.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, with a variety of housing too. The city limits extend all the way to the county line. You get a huge house for, let's say, $600,000-$700,000, which you can't afford on a salary for a city clerk. Identity I brought up earlier, I think people that are in charge of these very important positions should be driving the city streets and be interacting, with the city. It's not that you can't do that if you live outside the city, but I think the city, as we grow, as described, is gonna have to have an identity question, and I think it would help a lot if the person, specifically the clerk, lived within the city limits.
Okay,
And I can go on and on,
no, that's great, so
Need a different position.
where.
that's why we're doing this.
I think that the residents of the city of Tampa deserve the very, very best person who's willing to take these very, very difficult jobs, whether they reside in the city or not. And I think it is never as simple, or very rarely is it as simple as saying, I'm the best person for the clerk, I'm gonna move my entire family, I'm gonna take my kids out of their school. My husband is now gonna have a 2-hour commute. There are a lot of factors that go into just moving, and I'm the one who said affordability and kind of spun or got traction, but in my opinion, in my 20 years of local government, some of the best employees were the ones who did not live within the city of Tampa. And they purposely didn't move in the city of Tampa, they weren't required to, because they felt that they could be unbiased. But they cared every bit as much as anybody who lives in the city.
To just ask a quick follow-up, would you then remove it entirely or still require it be within the city?
I remember it entirely.
Okay, thank you. Stephen,
I still just think it should be. I think it should be a city resident. Role doesn't, I don't know if it ever changes, but I think it should be city resident. For the reasons that it will help.
okay, yeah, add that there's something, a new dimension. Ashley?
I do support them living in the city. Because right now, as it sits right now, whoever's gonna take that position next, they would have to have made provisions or right, be thinking ahead of time, like, okay, I may have to move, because that's the way it is right now. Whether we recommend and say county should be allowed, and city council says, oh, no, we're not doing that, they have to be a member of this, they have to be resident of the city.
Yeah, right
They're
now,
gonna make a decision.
you know what you're getting into, right?
Right, so it's not like we're making it, if we made a change and now I think that'll create a bigger, bigger and longer conversation, but I think that they should be a resident of the city.
So keep it as is.
Keep it as is.
Okay, Alan,
I gotta admit, I'm on the fence a little bit, because I do agree with what Garrett is saying in terms of police, fire, owning, your community. But we would also, the city clerk, as has been pointed out, is a different position because it is in the charter. So I don't think that changing residency requirement for the city clerk position needs to be done because they, as Drew pointed out, the salary is sufficient for the city limits, but maybe, I don't know if we're game for another discussion on other department heads, like whether it's involved with public safety or not, but I guess the bottom line is when it comes to the city clerk, perhaps we should not change it.
so leave it as is, thank you. Kathleen,
I just think talent is hard to get, and I think Rebecca raised all the points, so I'm sort of in the same stream of. I think I would like to say preferred city or Hillsborough County, but I don't want it to be shall, because I think that's too late, so.
Bobby,
I don't have any new arguments to add, I find both sides very compelling. And like I said in the beginning, for me, it's a consistency issue, maybe I'm just a very rigid person with that kind of personality. But I am pro removing the residency requirement.
no,
So let me start with commenting on, I'm not at this moment in time concerned with consistency on this issue. In other words, I'm only focused on the city council, we could have a long debate on what they did pass. Rebecca, what you said is very persuasive, but here, this position, I think it's in such a position that it's important that that person live, breathe, eat in Tampa. So if my choice is leave it as it is, or follow the line of thinking it's wide open, they can come from anywhere, I would stick with it just as a reason. You all could convince me to focus it on Hillsborough County, but not pull the band-aid completely off. So I will be, here and rest.
Okay.
Keep it as it is.
And for me, first, there are going to be very good points. I respect the opinions of everyone here. To me, it's a job. It's a very important job, but it's a job that's not an elected or appointed position where you have constituency. In fact, the charter says that it's supposed to be independent. And I don't see why we wouldn't want the most talented person for the job for the city. And so for me, I would think.
so if my math is right, 5 of you want to keep, and 4
Keep it as it is.
are removed.
Okay.
Based on expression.
Too much.
I just have a comment to offer, that the charter amendment in 2023, that department head requirement passed with 55%. So 45% of the voters
Okay.
did not agree with removing.
And 55 did. So this is pretty close to that when we look at it.
Right.
So as of right now, based on the way we operate, right, it's we use a majority for these decisions. I think right now we're gonna keep it. I realize not everyone loves that decision. I'll make note of that. In that, I'll say no changes, but I'll make note of that because every other no changes has been unanimous. This is the only time we've really come close. So I'll make a note of that. As we talked about, if you want to revisit it, you can do that later. If something else comes up, but for now, that's where we're going. Okay?
We can always change our mind though, right? Like this feels not like nothing set in stone.
Well, that's what I'm gonna put out for. We will, at a minimum, come back to this at least one more time, if not more than once, especially if we get to other areas like six, or actually six is the next section. We'll make a note of that, Bobby, but might pull your call for just a second. I wrote after reason because I want, particularly in a case like this, where not completely aligned, I want a little bit more information in the minutes around the pros and cons of the discussion. I think that's important because you guys brought up really good points on both sides. Final thoughts, Bobby, before we move on with this very famous 3.01.
I'm ready to move on from it, but I think.
You know that there's a rule.
This is a runaway comment, just to correct the record, they weren't all unanimous, no, I was the only vote on the city attorney.
Let me clear.
Just to make sure.
Okay, that's true.
8-1, Bobby, I remember that.
You're right, Bob. You're right. They're gonna go.
Yes, it will.
Close to, but not.
Yeah, the rest of the full stop.
Wow, like I said, that was,
Remember.
that was, okay, I wanted to get to this item here, so this is around the mayor. We answered no to the first question. The second question, going back to you, Bobby. You brought up the biking while black policy and whether, their question was, could council have prevented that from happening? I believe those are my words, remembering your words. It was only on the 10th of March, right before our prior meeting, when I received and then I summarily shared with you the mayor's memo, providing more information about that occurrence. I don't know if she explicitly answered the question you asked Bobby about could the council have prevented it, but she gave us more context around it. And I think we also saved some, I may have found, we may have shared another document around the issue because it had been some time. My question is this, now that we've gotten this, and again, to Ron's earlier point about our collective memory, part of it is it takes a while to get an answer, so we don't have a choice, but we did get one. Bobby, what was your thought on the response to that, since it was your issue you raised? I believe you raised the general concern and used that as the example for your concern to be, here's the problem we might be trying to solve, put it that way.
First of all, I strongly support the police. I mean, we in our neighborhood have the front porch roll calls with them. They come to our neighborhood association meetings. Anything that I said was not meant to be pejorative or derogatory to any of the officers in our department. I strongly support the police. And I can get into the memo and nitpick, like the Justice Department finding that it was not based on racial discrimination, but rather proactive policing in demographic areas of higher black population. I mean, it's like saying we're going foraging for fruit in the apple orchard, we weren't picking apples, it's like. So I'm not gonna get into that, but I think my argument still stands is that. Even though according to this memo, everything was done correctly, meaning once it was discovered that there was this issue going on, it was addressed appropriately, which I'm thankful that it was. I still think the underlying premise doesn't change. So if there is a problem, like the one I described, and it comes to light, maybe the mayor doesn't do anything about it, maybe it's a different type of issue that's not quite so egregious, but enough to draw the public ire. I still think that there should be some mechanism of correction for those types of, those issues that come from the city. And maybe I'll be the only no vote on this one again, but those are my thoughts.
What problem are you solving?
So, well, in this specific example, we went over that during our last one. But it's basically a stronger check on mayoral power that doesn't exist currently. Which I think that may be just a philosophical thing, I'm just kind of more in favor of a stronger council, I'm gonna be in the minority there. But that's where I stand on it, and if we do a quick straw poll and I'm just completely, alone, then I'm okay to move on.
And it's, I'll say something and then I'll do actually with Stephen on the comments. I think you're right, it's philosophical to the extent of where power lies. And it also is the distinction between being, a legislative function and an operational function, right? That's when these policies and procedures emerge. They're operational rules, right, to define how services are rendered and how department employees fulfill their missions. So with that in mind, Ashley and then Stephen go next.
You also brought up a point with, not saying what happened in Tampa, but just, there could be a mayor that is the person in office right now, pension, and decides to bring ICE in and just says, let's do this. But our community says we don't want to do that, and we want to stop. So there would be a way to stop that immediately. If there was we had that in place to be able to stop whatever orders the mayor. But I know that, we have it in place where we just won't vote them in. Well, there's some cities that their mayor's doing stuff and they're like, we didn't really vote for it, we don't want this to happen, but it's gonna happen anyway, because this person is in power.
I think
Not happening here now with our current mayor, but 2027 is coming.
I think I'm not gonna inject much before I call it Stephen, but I think that probably happens in a lot of cases where you maybe not seeing results you thought you voted for. It's not a partisan statement. Stephen.
I'm familiar with the program when it was rolled out. And my understanding was that it was part of the funding for it came from a traffic safety grant, federal traffic safety grant. So I think that it's obviously a case of unintended consequence. I don't know that I would go so far as to say that the entire thing was a mistake, which I think the letter sort of tries to throw it all out. I think the intention behind it was good, but the way that it was executed was not fair, and I agree that I think this is an area where being extremely forthcoming with information, with, fishing expeditions does allow information like this to come to light, and I don't know that it necessarily would have come to light if there hadn't been a news article.
Question, right?
And, I don't know what the solution is, but I do think it's an example of why council's ability to initiate investigations without being hindered is a power that we need to just make sure is very clearly articulated in terms of what the limits are, what they're allowed to ask for, what they're not allowed to ask for, because I do think that this is something that maybe that they couldn't have stopped. And I'm not saying they should be able to just stop it or cut off funding, but certainly asking for information, bringing light to it, I think it was interesting for both branches of government. The media was the one that, brought this forward. And I would have expected my council member to be more forthcoming about, or be more interested in investigating further. Once it was raised, I don't think that they were ever make when the article came out.
Did someone have, Alan, thank you.
In my frame of reference is, what's happening nationally, with President Trump's executive orders. The reality is Congress has no ability to course correct executive orders from the executive, but the executive orders are not law, they are policy of the president, which is subject to change if there is another president. And the legislature has the ability and should have the ability to investigate. So, I do agree with Stephen on that. And in the process of investigation, especially if it's done out in public and out in the open, could bring about the change that is sought if there is, something that happening that should not be happening in the way that is acceptable.
Thank you, Ron.
In the context of executive orders, though, to be clear, city council can't pass ordinances. And on something like the way for stopping people, it's within the power of city council to pass an ordinance prohibiting something. It's not.
I would put that question to the city attorney, whether or not you can legislate in an administrative.
The legislative branch passes the policy ordinance, the executive branch has a fiduciary responsibility to implement those laws and ordinances. So if the city council, for instance, says there's an ordinance that says you can't jaywalk, then you can't jaywalk. The mayor can, so the executive order saying it's okay to jaywalk there. So my point is that mayor can't issue any kind of executive order that's inconsistent with what the legislative body does. And the laws in the city are passed by the city council. So the city council has authority to do things, change course on things. The nature of the discussion has been like the mayor can just kind of go off and create something on our own that is inconsistent with what council wants to do. It can't be inconsistent with what the ordinance is saying. I might be wrong on that, but is that, can you clean me up if I am?
I think we're getting into the more broad take of what an ordinance would lay out versus an administrative action on how to implement it. And you're always gonna have that push and pull between the two. I think for this group, it's a question, are you satisfied with what's in the charter in terms of investigations and because I'm always coming back to, all right, what do you want to amend? What are you unhappy with the language you have? Or is there something new that you want to introduce into the charter? Because it's clearly weighted towards the mayor in terms of being a strong mayor form of government.
What does it say about investigations in the charter? Where is that?
You pulled up top here and kind of had your hand up, the nose first. So go ahead, Neil. Thank you.
We started talking about investigation, should there be ability to investigate? That's very different than the question posed in number 2, right? I mean, that's question 4, okay, which is not up there. Question 2 was, should city council have authority to override municipal policy or executive orders with voted by members? You know, I don't believe they should. I don't think that's how government works, or should it work. The question posed now is something different, and that is, should the legislative body have the ability to look under the hood, right? And then I think someone mentioned within what parameters and how would you define that, and what do they do once they found it? You know, I think there'd be a host of whole things that, you know, if that's our charts to navigate and we want to look at it, we look at it. That's different than what's the questions we framed last time. And I'm not suggesting we shouldn't go down this hole, but I just wanted to focus back on what number 2 said.
But I think the assumption though is that what occurred in the action description was a function of mineral policy or executive order and not an ordinance. That's what it is. So what occurred after action is the specific, the Viking Wildlife policy, the operational policy. Is that a function of the executive order or a function of enforcing an ordinance?
Well, if it's not an executive order or a mayoral policy, it probably was neither. Then, you know, it would have no applicability. It's like,
Well, I'm asking like where it falls. Does it even fall under number 2?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Think about what's happening right now, the council has debated on a policy, I think, for the Riverwalk or trails regarding biking. Right, that would be legislative, that is under the city council. The biking while black, those issues, I think, were a mayoral policy that went into the police department,
Or even if
not through city council.
Even if it wasn't, so we use the word policy a lot here. Policy is sort of a broad set of guidelines for the way we operate. It could have just been managerial decision, or someone just said, go do this. Right, I mean, I'm just saying it, we're using the
Well,
word.
that's the wrong word, but the point is the mayor with the executive authority told the police department, like, this is the, instead of the word policy, pick a word, right?
No, right, go
versus.
It's probably a funded program, they have federal money, they have federal money with a program. And they do have put it into the department that could have rolled it. And
They
it's
did,
not
the point is,
successful.
it wasn't legislative, it was a whole.
Yeah, it was exactly.
The law they were enforcing was legislative. I don't know if it was specifically a city ordinance or I'm pretty sure it's a state law, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's how it was enforced. Or the manner in which it was enforced, which the accusation was it was selective enforcement in areas with a specific demographic, which it in fact was, but that was not the intent behind the way it was enforced. the intent was not to focus on the day rates, it was a second, and that's what the memo sort of explains. So it's, the manner in which something is enforced is an administrative function. And does council have the ability to ask questions about that? And I think that relates to the other section, word number 2, I'm not trying to open that can of worms now, I'm just saying.
I want to tee off what Bill said though, given that distinction. Leaving the conversation around investigatory power and process aside for a moment. Does anyone believe the answer to this should be yes, or that these two branches should continue to operate as they do?
An important issue, I mean, just to raise, because we're talking about it was the mayor's decision, I mean, at least in the. In the letter the mayor, or memo the mayor just wrote to us, it says it was a decision of this department independent of the mayor's office. So it was a practical decision made at the police department level in that case, at least that's the information here. We might have other.
But she or he would still be accountable for the impacts of them, right? Because it's still within the.
Right, but then the question would be, in order to remedy that, are we suggesting that, right, city council would be able to go into department policies and, you know, make decisions that starts to get funky?
If I'm reading the room, I'm not seeing a big push to answer this as yes, but I do see more momentum for a discussion around being able to investigate. Am I misconstruing that as a role? Yeah,
Probably, so kill what's gonna go.
Just so we're clear, we're talking about official executive orders and also mayoral policy, which we're saying is just a general blanket term for anything that's not an executive order or an ordinance.
I think so, because the example is down at the department level.
I don't know, good point, quick, Rob.
We didn't write the questions, so we're trying to understand them. And then we had an example that wasn't part of the questions, and we're trying to tie it to it. That's why these questions are good for the conversation, it's sometimes hard to know what else was behind them, and that's kind of be a heated.
So, I mean, obviously, these questions are all interrelated and really hard to separate because they all speak the same process that might have to be looked at and examined. But there are, I mean, I don't think it's accurate to say that there may be a solution in ordinance for every administrative policy or program. For example, if you have someone completely independent of the mayor, maybe like in a housing department, doing something fishy with housing grants, that's discriminatory in some way. The city council wouldn't really, I don't think, have any answer to that, because that would already be covered under some other law, but if there's a whistleblower rolls into the investigation part of it, then the city council may have the ability to go in and look and say, all right, what's going on here, we need to take a vote to stop this for now, halt this program, even if the mayor wants to continue, because it's something that maybe.
So again, that's back to the investigatory.
They're all, it's hard to separate these issues.
Okay. That's way back to my point about pausing things for a few months, if that's an option. Only because we are just seeing some crazy stuff happening in the world right now, and it's like there's nothing we can do, there's nothing put in place to stop it, I feel like. Well, there are things, but we can't do anything. So I just feel like if there was a way for us to stop some strong mayor, not the current one, but in the future, if it ever happens, we have this rogue mayor and it needs to stop. I feel like there needs to be something put in place for us to be able to stop it. So that's my point. I know y'all think that would never happen, but I think it'll never.
No, but the contracts have consequences. If you have someone rogue, elections have consequences, you vote them out.
We're stuck.
I mean,
We're stuck.
Okay, so just speaking of pausing, Derek, go ahead.
Rod will have you say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Rob, the point you made, I think at first was council maybe doesn't have the authority to act in all instances, but then I think what you said was that if they investigate, then they could. If it's something they can't act on, then investigating it's not changing anyway because they can't act on it. If they could act on it, I mean, I believe it's within the purview of city council, for instance, to legislate anti-discrimination city. And the mayor would be bound by that. everybody, police department, like that. And so I'm just a little bit hesitant to open up this investigative authority that I'm not sure what it would result in. And, you know, records are public records, and so it's not that we don't have access to things. You know, the federal analogy is very different, because right now, Congress and the President are both in lockstep going in a particular direction, so there is no check and balance. That would presume that here we've elected. And one of the things that is good about what's happening in the city is there is some check and balance. If we were in a situation where there wasn't, then this would be a new issue anyway. So I'm just hesitant to give authority for people to utilize resources of the city to wield it for political means. Not that any of our current commissioners would go that. Ordinance, we could have city council people in the future who would use that for political means. And I'm just not sure what it gets us.
Right, because I agree with Ron. The question I would have is the current ordinance that governs investigations. Can it be used to investigate a situation like this if it is done under the understanding the city council is considering an ordinance that would make something legal or not legal? So the question is the current ordinance involving investigations sufficient for the city council to look into situations like this? I mean, I agree, especially considering giving our city council the power to subpoena, that could be misused for political reasons. And I know from talking to the city council that their current members of the city council would be uncomfortable with that. So again, is the city council precluded from investigating a situation like bicycle involved all black using current ordinance?
It's in 2.14. The exercise of its legislative powers, the council or any special committee thereof shall have the power to conduct such investigation, hold hearings, as council shall deem necessary, expedient, and proper, and shall have the power to compel the attendance of witnesses, production of evidence, by the issuance of all forms of subpoenas, that shall have the power to punish for contempt for blah blah blah. 2.14. So I mean that's a pretty. The answer is yes. There's no, it doesn't exclude, it doesn't say not to follow it. Let's even Rebecca, you guys have been in city government. That's a legislative authority.
I think that depends upon the interpretation of the city attorney at the time. I mean,
I can't imagine how that could be subject in the exercise of its legislative power. They're the legislative branch of the city of Tampa. They have the power to investigate, hold hearings. I mean, I guess we could ask the city attorney to memorialize what they believe that to be. That's, to me, I don't know. I don't read that as gray.
I will say.
We if you want.
Can they do something?
I would ask that question. I would ask that question to the city attorney.
What's the question?
The city attorney.
Can we?
Oh, dude, you know, I mean, I guess it would be. How does the city attorney interpret 2.14? Does the city council have the ability to undertake an investigation? Right?
Can I clarify your point? Yes. So so the purpose of your argument was that the city council could undertake an investigation based on the fact that they're ruling out a legislative response to whatever they're investigating. Is that what you were trying to
He's saying that they make use of legislative response.
Right. Right, you could say in a situation like this. We are starting an investigation because the city council is interested in considering whether or not to pass an ordinance that would make policy illegal.
It's discrimination.
So that's so broad, I mean, I think that they can apply to almost anything.
I think that there are multiple examples of things that are within city council's ability. That are connected to something like this, for instance. Voting on the grant agreement that accepted the funds, they should be able to ask how the funds are being used, what are the operational directives that are tied to that? What of those things are actually in the agreement versus what is in the city's purview? And I also disagree with characterizing it as something that is not helpful, because the council has public comment. And they're accountable to people that come forward, and they should be able to ask whatever questions they want about how the city is operating. Because the public is there listening and asking questions, even if the city attorney at the time might feel that they don't have any direct ability to effectuate a change. It's a public forum that the mayor is not required to show up to and answer questions and respond to the council's.
I think it's a very good point. The investigation itself brings things to light. It makes them public, and then elections have consequences. Now, it's interesting, you bring up another point, Steve, that is 2.14. It says it can investigate. It doesn't speak to what it does at the end of the investigation, what authority it does to have, what powers come out of it.
That it does.
What does it say?
It says they have the power to punish.
Punish or contempt, that means you didn't show up or whatever,
Right.
but I'm saying, meanwhile, judgment, like, all this investigation is going on and all that stuff, meanwhile, people are still getting arrested, this is still going on. Like, I would like for there to be a way for council to stop it.
Can I ask a question to the group as I'm thinking about this? Yeah. Leaving this example aside, because it's a charged example, but will there not always be cases where the executive branch is doing things that, even if they're not horrible, may be suboptimal, partial failures, some may be big wins? Isn't there a whole range of possible outcomes coming out of the operation of government that would either please or displease council anyway? So I'm just asking that generally, because this is an egregious example, but there are, I mean, speaking on the county side, we get through our commissioners, all kinds of things land on us to deal with that. Some can construe as a failure, some can construe as miscommunication, some can construe as just a grumpy citizen, but still a valid concern. But my point is that you never get to, you're always going to have some gap in some places, probably between what we hope is happening from an operational standpoint does. And I mentioned that more broadly around whether or not that's, so how do you fix that as a broader question? Is this the way you do it? I don't.
And I'm sorry that I keep on referring to how it works in the federal system, but it works this way in the state system as well. Like, take the Epstein case. The executive branch was not going to do what the public wanted it to do involving Mr. Connell's. Geez, that Congress was pretty damn quick in terms of passing a law forcing the executive branch to release those records. It is theoretically possible for the legislative body to work quickly to do that if there is a will on the part of the legislative branch to do that. So I don't know if it is around the state or around the country, if city councils are given that kind of power to stop the mayor or the administration for doing something just by, in that fashion. I agree with your sentiment. I agree, how frustrated we all are in terms of what we're seeing in Washington. But I think there is, as far as I see, within the charter right now, the ability for the city council to jump on an issue like this and investigate and pass an ordinance that would stop it from happening right then and there.
We could have gotten all Epstein files too.
It's like, I'm not a government person, I'm not involved in government, but I'm looking at this big thing, and I'm like, there's nothing that can stop this, like, I'm just. They put something in place to stop this, or to make.
Well, that's such a good point, just getting the documents, the investigation, pull the banding off. You're right.
So the investigation, but Gary, you asked.
Well, she said, I think that's.
I don't, sorry, that to me is, I'm still learning your program.
Trying to do it without like.
No,
like,
you're
even
fine, I just don't know what
like-
it is. I'm looking at your faces. Go ahead, Rebecca.
I empathize so extremely with you, Ashley, on wishing that there was a quick fix for some of the things that are going on. Also in the world right now. But if we take it down to. We've got an administrator and we've got a legislative body. And they make the laws, this person implements them and implements policies within those and within the other things that are given to them in the charter. And they disagree all the time. And in the city, we're super lucky that we have a really good balance. There has not been a time, and I think, Bob, you probably have seen this in your research, where there hasn't been conflict. There's been times when there's been less conflict, but there's never been time where there has been conflict. And I don't know where you could draw a line of, I disagree with this policy, you need to be doing more here, you need to be doing more here, you need to be doing more here, and this is outrageously insane. And because I can't figure out where to draw that line, you fall back into democracy is messy and terrible and uncomfortable and doesn't work the way we want it to. But it keeps that division and it keeps that tension going. And it's not fast and it's built not to be fast. And so we can't, within less than 2 readings, do a legislative decision. But I do feel we have really good checks and balances, particularly in the way city council set up, 7 and 4 and 3, and all of that has kept this nice tension going. So to that point, I wouldn't support having the legislature be able to override executive orders or mayoral policies. There's no bright line that I can figure out that would make it work that I would be comfortable with. Stephen's point about investigations and everyone's point about investigations is an important one. To me, it seems that they have worked well. To the extent that they haven't worked well, it's all public record. Nobody really should be able to hide anything. That's the nature of government in Florida at the local level, not at the state level. So I feel comfortable with the investigative authority. Steve's made a very valid point of what does it mean when it has to be within the legislative authority, like that whole thing is kind of captioned in that. Happy to get some feedback on that. To me, it seems like it's been working well, but I'm happy to hear more information on that. But actually, I don't feel like, because I'm not going to agree with that I'm not completely.
No, I understand.
In empathy with
What's going on?
the underlying concern.
Yeah. I understand, but let me I understand y'all's people's take on why you would be okay with the mayor just being able to do what they need to do. Or why they feel like they can feel their policies and everything, but you know, it goes kind of back to what Bill says, like, what's the problem? It's the problem. If the problem does not affect your community, it's not a problem. But when it affects your community, if I said, okay, well, maybe they're gonna bring up something that's gonna come after your grandparents' pensions or your mother and father's pensions, oh, now it's a problem. But this is something that may not affect you. If the mayor does not care about your community and is doing something that is affecting your community, it's a problem. And I'm just saying, I see it as a problem because people voice those things to me and say it's a problem. But it goes back to, you know, that question about the voting population within certain districts. There's more people in certain areas that have more voting power. Whereas if you live in a district where we don't have as much voting power, our vote may not be, you know, as weighted. But
Hold on, now Bobby did the sign, picking up on this.
Thank you.
I know, they're every guy.
Now you're signing, oh, yeah.
I have to.
Good, Bobby, then we'll go to Alan, then I wanna get a show of hands, because I think this might even be something to revisit, because I don't want us to.
Well, I can see like.
But Bobby, go ahead,
Like,
and Alan, and I wanna see where we stand, and then we'll do a check one at a time.
So I think with the point that you made and that Rebecca was making about. There's a multiplicity of outcomes in government that may or may not be favorable to a certain group, if that group being the council. They baked into the question is a fail-safe mechanism, included in the question is the number of votes that would be needed to do this, and that's, I think, a topic that. Or a piece of the equation that we haven't really touched on is that is something that we can also consider too, like if there's a sentiment among the group that yes, there needs to be. Some sort of heavier check or a more equal balance, but we don't know where to draw the line. Maybe it's not 5 votes, maybe it's a unanimous council, because. I mean, when do you get an unanimous council? It's never, so it would have to be some incredibly. High level of. I guess wrongdoing, that's the appropriate word, if we're thinking about it that way. For it to get there, the 7 votes.
Good, Alan.
I do agree with Bobby, what Bobby is saying there, and that is not here. What I'm concerned about actually is the reverse of what you were saying. Let's say the city of Tampa elected someone from your precinct or your district and has a city council that opposes them at every single turn. They could shut down the mayor there just because of what really is political consideration. So you know, the reverse of that. could
If we
be-
had a black mayor
Yes,
and
And,
this
you know-
black mayor was contested by the city council, every decision that they made,
yes.
that is a great point. But. I'm hoping one day it won't, but I see.
We're doing the placard thing now.
Ron is next. And then,
So there we go.
and then see.
So can,
I'm sorry, yeah.
go ahead, Ron.
I had a earlier tell we would pass this.
But that wasn't intentional. No, no.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make the point that. If there's something that happens that's illegal, like in this instance, potentially illegal. The Department of Justice got on it, right, and you can't, the mayor or anybody in the city administration. Can conduct activity that's illegal and can continue to perpetrate it without it being stopped. What. Second point I wanted to make on this particular instance too is, once it came to light, it wasn't as if it was known, to my knowledge, so it was known to everybody and people were complacent in it. Once the activity came to light, the DOJ did open an investigation fairly quickly and started to look at it. So there is, unlike the federal government, which there is nothing bigger than federal government, they said, here we've got a state governor can remove something from office, can remove the mayor from office. In fact, our attorney general last week or week before to intimated that, reminded our administration of that. And so we do have other checks and balances too, and other investigative bodies in addition to city council.
Okay, well, thank you. Since moving, I'm just gonna go around the room real quick with everyone who wants to make their comments. Then we have to pause, leave time for new business, talk about our approach for next time. We may not get to this final decision, but we'll have to revisit it, so you get to think about it some more. Bobby, are you still in the queue? If not, I'm gonna go to Kathleen. Kathleen,
My question is, I think that the investigation statement in here is pretty thoughtful and thorough. You guys all intimate that it's not really, to cover Ashley's point, that the council has the ability to question, act, investigate, recommend changes. If that's not the case, then I would suggest some language in there, but when I read this, I thought, well, they do have the authority to do what they would need to do to ensure that programs are being effectively managed. And I think to your other point, Ashley, I do think that we should have something about population coverage and council representation as it grows, so that it's not so distorted as it relates to the different population, but that's different subject than this, so that's.
The investigation section 2.14, just as a reminder, we all agree was okay as it is. So I mentioned that, if you can remember your point about population for when we get to back to 2, because I want to make sure you keep that thought. I'm gonna continue going around the room, so Stephen, next on this issue.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, point taken on timeliness of response, totally agree. And the Tampa Bay Times article didn't drop until April of 2015, so that was roughly 3 years since the program began. I find it hard to believe that nobody showed up in city council or public comment to raise this as an issue during that time. I'm willing to take time to go back and look, we'll see if anything came up. I don't know that it is relevant as to whether or not at the time council had any conversations or was advised, don't touch this, decided to remain, but given the fact that, I think we did identify a couple of places where there was some limitations put on investigations. You know, through the lens of legislative power, I think making sure that it's crystal clear what power city council has in terms of investigations is directly related to this, even though it's not this section. So I need to keep going back to that, but.
I wrote down that clause doesn't lay out response options, which is kind of what you're saying.
But it's the facts that you laid out is important. The insinuation was that people came to the public meeting, told city council members tried to act on it, were told that they couldn't act on it. That's what you just, I think that's what you just said.
No, I'm not saying that they did or didn't, but I'm saying if that were to occur, then what is can city council actually initiate investigation based on or what they've been told not?
Little, I mean, look, I'm on city council and somebody tells me that discrimination is happening in the city. Nobody that's gonna tell me they can't do something. I'm gonna call the DOJ myself if it's at that point.
Okay, I'm gonna pause this, I'm gonna leave this for next time. I'd like to quickly scan through the status of the other actions. We have a couple of new ones from today I mentioned. That I'm hoping we can do pretty quickly. It would be ideal to have answers to all of these, so we can do a full sweep. But let's just recap where we are, and then I want to give a few minutes to the earlier question. If you guys want a motion on all this stuff as we go, we'll come back and unmotion if we change it. I think the cause of the, remember what we talked about, isn't motioning or not motioning. I think we had questions and the answers came a month later. I think that's the problem, right? Because if we got them the next week, we would have quickly been on the same topic, we wouldn't have moved forward, but we were waiting for answers, so we moved forward. But in any case, we'll get to that. Let's just go through where we are on some of these other action items, if you don't mind. Based on today, Bill, maybe it's 7 meetings more, not 6, just so you know. Yeah, it is an important conversation, absolutely, I'm not saying. So we have a question around whether procurement policy requires the mayor to disclose conflicts of interest. This was the request for data, and I know administration is working on if there were any excessive salary changes mid-year that were beyond the pale. Again, we'll have that by Friday, I'll share that. We get to 4.02, no changes. 5.01, no changes or answers to the questions. Confirming that after Scott was with us, we kind of burned through 5, and there essentially very few changes. I don't think any, but maybe 1. This was the timeframes around audit report sharing audit reports. And we'll have this by Friday too. So that's the only, I think the only one in the 5 cluster that remains outstanding. And we're gonna start fire chief in it. You know, find back earlier, and then we go back, and then we didn't get to 6. So really, when you think about it, there's not much we need to get through the earlier portion, but we need to run this to ground before we continue anything. The good news is we should have it before next time. So I wanted to mention that. Let me get back to the presentation and. Yeah, okay, going quickly back, like I said, I think part of the challenge, and I agree with you, Ron. revisiting these things is harder than doing them one and done, 100% agree. I'm trying to take good notes to get us there as much as we can, but I'm dependent on others. Clearly, we're getting the answers now. So it's really up to this group to decide. For example, we just did the clerical. We had, took a little bit of a while, but we decided to leave it. Do we prefer to memorialize that? I think is what you're saying, right?
No, what I was saying is, if we agree to a language change, instruct Ken to do language change.
Okay.
Unless Ken can't for some reason run down the legal analysis and stuff to make it by the next meeting. We should have a language change in front of us at the next meeting.
Okay.
To review and approve it to go into the final report, again with the reservation or. The only thing that's coming to council is the final report, we're all gonna vote yea or nay on what's in the report. My concern is that if we give direction on a specific language change, please make a change. And then we don't see that for 3 months, it's gonna be harder for us to remember exactly what we thought through the process and whether that is reflected. Again, I know Ken's gonna do a good job, but.
Just to bring everybody up to speed, we're doing that live. So every language change that's been requested so far is already on the SharePoint as far as what you can do. It's a question, do you want to have it then at the meeting to vote about, or do you want to keep that in mind?
Right, they were fairly minor so far, but once I agreed that, because I thought we were thinking wrong, we need to get these, we need to see what Ken does with it.
It's not that we're not seeing it,
Sure.
it's that we're not debating it. Making sure we've got it.
And what I plan to do, and then let's talk here, what I plan to do was, when you saw there was an action for Ken. What I would do to get you guys to sign off on the section, I'm gonna pull up that charter, and show you the language of Ken. If you haven't already looked at it, you've heard what I am.
See the amended version.
But I'll show you that and say, does this meet your satisfaction? So I did plan to do it. I wasn't gonna leave it on the side, just kind of an active document. I was gonna go through, like I said, for every section to come to one of two things. No changes, look at the changes, decide if they meet with your approval, then move on. Go.
Ron, I just want to clarify, when you say at the end, look at final document, up or down. You're not suggesting we just vote up or down the document, we're gonna go through each of the others again, right?
Whatever the pleasure of the group,
Some fun, but I mean, I would want to go through each of the items,
Yes.
and not just have to vote. I just want to make sure that.
what I mean is, we all will review the totality of the document, we get the provisions on it. My concern was if there are specific changes, albeit Ken's making them, getting into the SharePoint. We're not talking about whether it's reflected what we actually wanted. And if we don't do that until June or July, I feel like we're in this institutional.
If there's been minor changes today, how long do you think it would take to go through the changes today at the next meeting?
About 6 minutes.
Okay, so why don't we just, if it's a 6-minute look, why the heck are we going, let's just look at it together.
Exactly what I was gonna do.
Ron, I think that satisfies what you're concerned with.
Yep.
We can all look at it and see it.
Yeah, they're teed up, they're ready. In fact, Ken will test, I chase him until he does it. There are 2 outstanding ones that, like, I don't think he did these, Ken. Called him, he made them. You may like what he wrote, or you may want to change it. That's for the conversation, Ken. Right now, they're fairly small, thankfully. But when we meet next time, we will show you everything. And we will have answers, hopefully, to everything. The only 2 new actions on it today were to find out a little bit more about the potential disconnects between the 8.01 and 2.01 that we discussed when the planning commission was here. And then the sharing of the legislation. So this feeds into revision 2, I think, as long as, and also digesting what Kurt did. But with these answers, the goal is before next meeting, we have all answers, everything you need to at least tell each other if you like the direction you want to go. That work? Okay. Great, thank you. I think that's it. Except for.
3 minutes to spare.
You know, well,
Right.
it was a good conversation, though, and I thought the planning commission part was really useful.
Yeah.
And your request to have these experts, I think, is added to what we need to talk about.
If I may,
Would it?
just to go back to old business.
Yes,
With that, list of housekeeping changes, there are any also be included in the update from the Mr. Standing as well?
list of housekeeping changes, we mean.
So the legal department, there was a motion that was passed by this group to ask if the legal department had any housekeeping changes to the charge.
We have some of those.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we shared those in there already, so yeah, they're in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the email or just in the.
That was an action that I think I updated you about a while back. That was one of the first things Aaron Bradley did for us. If you look into. I'll double check, but I'm almost 100% sure they're in the reference materials with those documents. But I'll double check and reiterate, just so you guys are clear. I think. Okay.
Then, motion to enter the meeting. That's the, a second.
Second.
Moved properly seconded, any discussion?
So it's Ron and then Alan on the second on that? Okay,
Yes,
just want to make sure.
thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Alright, meeting adjourned.
Hey, you guys.
Seconds.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
They are.
So.
Very good.